See you again. We're back again, live streaming with some cool people. I got Adam, as always, every Sunday. What's up? And today we've got Angie. What's up?
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's great to have people around me. I'm so isolated. I live on a dead end street. I never see anybody. So you guys are a sight for sore eyes. So did you guys hear about the thing? There's a thing. Guy ran through the White House Correspondents' dinner where they had the hotel. I don't think he made it. I don't think he breached the where the guy was, where Trump was, but made a big scare. Trump fell down. They took JD Vance by the scruff of his shirt and dragged him out, and protecting all the very important people. And I was reading a little bit about the guys. What do you guys know about the situation? Did you hear anything?
I'm tuning out. I'm tuning it out. I think there's so much noise online. I think Angie's with me on this. There's so much noise online. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know anything.
Yeah.
We never will know anything.
You think it might be fake?
I don't think it's fake. I don't know. For me, I'm like, what does it change at this point? If it's fake, if it's real, if it had succeeded, if it failed, I don't know. I feel like the structures are just so ingrained at this point that, like, I remember someone was like, oh, well, they saved Vance before they saved Trump. I'm like, yeah, well, probably because they think Trump only has a few months left. And if Vance is in there, then what does it matter? But what do you think, Angie? I know you said you were also like, I don't care.
I've hit a similar point of, men will storm the White House Correspondents' Dinner, but God forbid they try to intervene when police are arresting their fellow protesters. I don't know necessarily that this has a huge impact. I feel like with every new assassination attempt or act of public violence that happens, there's an urge to question whether or not it was genuine or whether it came from a place of practical theory. But I just don't think that that's a really meaningful conversation unless the person who is alleged to commit the crime or commit the act is ready to engage in that conversation. I just, God, our energy is so sapped that what is the point at this time in trying to kind of dissect? No one knows how to write a manifesto these days. I know there's maybe like 10 lines written that I think were published.
I read my manifesto is ChatGPT all the way,
No, and it might be. I saw a very brief one. I couldn't verify it, and I didn't have the heart to really spend that much time trying to dig through and see where this manifesto had originated. I believe the source I saw claimed that it was sent to his family members, I believe a sibling. And it just felt like it could have been AI slop. It felt like you could have kind of fed my Twitter feed into Gemini and asked Gemini, hey, can you produce a 300-word manifesto segmented by sentence, please, so that the average American reader can consume it easily and give me something to post? I don't know.
No. Make it more angry, more angry.
Absolutely. And I wish it had been more angry. I think the closest thing that I saw to kind of vindictive revolutionary rage was a vague mention to no longer wanting a pedophilic child killer to put blood on his hands, which, like, that's great, but Iran has been saying that every 2 days.
Is that revolutionary? That's a fairly baseline, desire from any sane person of any political tendency. Just not have a pedophile in power.
Yeah, it just no longer feels genuine so often. Yeah.
And then there's this, of course, they found this picture of him allegedly that has him in an IDF sweatshirt. Another nugget that makes it more interesting, I guess. But if that's true, I have no idea what the fuck this guy could be thinking. That if the manifesto is real, that he cares so much about the morality of Trump. It seems like another brain dead liberal with Trump on his mind. He supports Israel, but Trump is unacceptable. Like, I think people are just generally confused. Like the human species in the West, completely lost.
I think there's an urge in all of us generally to want to have agency, even if we have to imagine it for ourselves, right? So I can really understand, even from someone who, I mean, I think many of us know folks who are politically confused, let's say. Several prominent diasporas come to mind. We look at those people and like you can see in them a real desire to feel agency and feel like they have a role and they have the ability to manufacture their fate in the machine. And even with a case like this, I don't know how much we can really like extrapolate on someone like this, but the more that we try to isolate, like, I am the hero, I am the cog in the machine that will break it all, like, that's not how any of
I
this has ever worked in
I am the
revolution.
great man of history who will shift things
Yeah.
irrevocably. Yeah.
Yeah, the I am Neo, this is my matrix, and I'm gonna break it. We need to really rethink this kind of individualism in revolution that just I don't know, especially when we then end up in a social media kind of spiral on it where we're digging into a person beyond what we can, fathomably extrapolate. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we want there to be an answer that's easy to dissect by looking at this man and what he did and his psychology. And somehow through that, we're going to dispel how to make systemic change, which is not coming because, like you said, the individuality, it's a hyper individualist society that has given up on true collective thinking, so that to the point where when they even try to do something good, it has to be a TikTok video of, and it's all about them, and it's, hyper focused on the self, right?
Well, and even still, like we still don't know. I don't think we have any motivations for the first would-be assassin from a couple years ago now, right? When he was in, what was it? Was it Pennsylvania? Was it like we still don't know why? And even if we did know, what would change? Like what we were talking about last week, where there's that anarchistic, hyper individualist mindset of it's like the propaganda of the deed, as the French anarchists of the 19th century called it, where if I just blow things up, if I just assassinate someone, then that will spark the change. And I think we can argue that, save for the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, these sort of acts never actually produce anything in motion, or dialectically for that matter, that could produce the kind of effects that they are hoping for. But I don't know. I'm not. Angie's a scholar on political violence.
Really? So what do you
Yeah.
think?
I'm very fortunate to have my bachelor's degree in political science, international relations focused, and a master's in international development focusing on war and conflict. And in my experience and in my studies, this type of acts of violence, acts of terrorism, I struggle with the word terrorism as a scholar of terrorism myself, but they don't cause this kind of radical change we expect them to. What they cause is a mass trauma. I mean, we look at 9/11, it didn't cause a mass shift in what American foreign policy was. What it caused was a trauma strong enough to be evoked anytime the US needed a carte blanche to act how they wanted overseas. And I think that that's true in just about any modern case of what we would now consider like a contentious or internationalized conflict, because it's so easy to spin those narratives and to make configurations that are more apt for the home state, for the imperial core, now that we have this more individualized and consumable way to access politics. But when it comes to that kind of act of individual violence, there's no rationale for what happens next. I think, Adam, you touched on this briefly. There's no plan in place. There's no moving parts to come in and flank to be the next step once that person who has lit the spark is down. So what does that leave us with? It leaves you with a imperial core that is even more galvanized and even more legitimized because they're able to point to these threats. It's effectively creating martyrs out of our political opponents in ways that it just really is historically unprecedented. It feels like if even the liberals of the French Revolution could see us now, it would be they would be spitting at us. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, but and the anger is palpable, and I understand that people want to say these things and get off on the idea that there'll be some sweet revenge happening like this. But then what do you say? I mean, historically, I agree with you. There's not going to be one huge catalyst that drives it. But then what with our the technological horizon that we're on, we're in uncharted waters with where we are as human beings and our efforts to gather society amongst certain minds. So how do we get the better world that we want? We can't just vote harder, surely not, but we also can't start, torching everybody, because then they'll say, oh, look at those savages. Do we have to out mature the imperialist machine? And like Iran is coming up, we're like, they're scholars and they're like, we're going to beat you. And is that how they do it? They just say, look, we're actually still human beings, so fuck you.
Well, I also think, Iran has the geostrategic depth that the American proletariat doesn't. We don't have a Strait of Hormuz Trump card that we can, play to shut down the world economy.
Pretty sweet.
I do think I think what you're saying is right in that, there's a lack of education just in general, lack of political awareness, political understanding. And again, like we talked about last week, I don't think that's necessarily the fault of the American masses, because we have the Cold War that has neutered our political education. I remember I was a freshman in college, and I asked, we got, we heard the common refrain from a history class discussion of, communism never works. It always fails. And I just raised my hand and I was like, well, then why does Cuba have a higher, better health outcomes than the US did? And she didn't really have an answer for me. She's like, oh, we have to take a political economy class. And I was like, okay, so you're just repeating this.
It's in the book. I'm just reading what's in the book.
It's like, you're just repeating this refrain because that's what Angie can speak to this better than either of us can. But like, that is just your refrain within the halls of academia in the United States, whether it is from elementary school to the upper echelons of universities. Like, you have a script that you stick to. And I feel like I have a friend who's at Columbia now, and she told me, I thought it was so interesting that within her master's program, everyone is a Marxist except for those in political science and economics departments. And so, like within her humanities circle.
Yeah, like I don't know what to tell you guys. And if you are a Marxist in a political science class, like, expect to be fighting for your life. I don't know. I've had to explain dialectical materialism to people like they're 4, and it's still like, sweetheart, just if we just lay out a timeline, but we got to use pictures. I don't know, whatever they need. But you're right. Yeah. I mean, there needs to be a little more truly, and I hate using this word because it's overused, but community building rather than this kind of propagation of violent revolutionary action. Mm-hmm. Violent revolutionary action works in places like Lebanon or Palestine or the various realms of the world where communities still interact day to day, where they still rely on each other for their day-to-day needs and rely on the interconnectedness of this village and that village and the bridge between them and what connects them to the center town and all of those interconnected links that make it possible for violent revolution, for violent radical action to happen and to protect those individuals that are marginalized from an oppressive imperial force. We don't have any of that in the US or even in greater parts of Europe outside of like the digital sphere. And the digital sphere is notoriously awful. I can point to like 5 or 6 cases off the top of my head where the internet has gotten it dangerously wrong and still not really kind of rolled it back there. So we're stuck in this sort of desire to see something change, but complete denial of any responsibility to lean on our neighbors and allow them to lean on us.
Yeah. Well, it's a helplessness brought on by years of conditioning. And it's you can't just get out of that. And the other big caveat is that there's a police state. There's a huge police state that's ready, that they're like, oh, please let there be protesters so I can crack people's heads open. They have Telegram chats where they found that these people are just like, I can't wait for them to come out. I think that's probably one of the big deals. And the military and stuff. Communist revolutions generally happen in places that weren't industrialized, that didn't have, these big forces already in place that keep the status quo cemented. And
right? Yeah, well, I was just going to say too, even when you look at, there is no analog in the modern history of the world for a communist revolutionist society like the United States, like you're saying. But when you look at the Bolsheviks, they were able to help amass power by both legal and illegal activity. But that's also because they infiltrated the army. They infiltrated the army during World War I. They got the support of the armed forces of Tsarist Russia. And they also had the backings of the Soviets. The Soviets, were not a creation of the Bolsheviks. The Soviets formed an alliance with the Bolsheviks because they saw that they could be a node of working class power. So it was very hard, very methodical community work that the Bolsheviks did. And then they waited for the revolution to happen just before they could start their own revolution. I think that's, I'm not saying there's a cut and copy and paste model for revolution in the world, but like Angie is saying, there needs to be mass work that happens first that does not involve violence, that does not involve, quote unquote terrorist activity, though. I think anything like you were saying, Chris, the state is waiting for anyone who is left of center to commit an act of violence as a pretense to seize them, seize their friends.
I'll also say, though, that police state, it's in our brains too. It's in our minds, even us leftists. Like, I opened this by saying, like, alleged perpetrator. That's not, we're talking about acts of potential war in the lens of crime. We think about perpetrators of revolutionary action as terrorists still. And I think we still think of ourselves as needing to abide by a legal code that does not align with our morals anymore. I won't say more than that, but I'll just say we need to think about what it is that we actually value and how we move in our world. But that nothing, I don't know, like if I went out and wanted to do something to change my neighborhood, the best thing that I could do is connect with 10 people down my street and see who of them has health challenges that I can support. Who of them might suffer a fall that can call me and I can go pick them up so that they can call me when they might be able to offer me support. Those are the things that then make it possible for us to rely less on the state, to rely less on the imperial core that is forcing us to kind of lean half on it and half on ourselves just to survive, and conceive of a world where it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, especially, most of the country, when everyone thinks of the US, they think New York, LA, Chicago, but most of the country is a deindustrialized, rapidly decaying, place. Like anywhere in like the middle America, Oh, Chris, you still with us? All right, well, anywhere in middle America, in the Midwest especially, it needs support systems like this. Like there are places in Chicago that are food deserts, for Christ's sake. There are people who cannot get to a grocery store within 40 minutes without using public transportation. If we had a more organized apparatus, I think that would be more useful than trying to train everybody how to use a gun. Or
well, think about all of the other skills that are revolutionary. I think personally, like gardening has been huge. Farming is huge in our communities and in our families. I see so many communities that would benefit from just knowing to cultivate vegetables, knowing how to grow things within the home, knowing what can and can't be harvested from an environment. There's so many skills that I think we're losing in the, I don't know, like act now, think later era of political action that I'm not sure. I don't know what the steps are to correct that.
I don't either. I don't know if anybody does. I think if they did, we wouldn't be sitting here having this discussion. Did you see, I need to look it up on Instagram again. There was a woman who I think she's in Vietnam, and she talked about, she's a medical student, and she talked about how we need to rethink something like street medicine or street care, because it's the anarchist logic of, anybody can be a doctor, anybody can be a nurse. But she's like, no, actually, this is a very dangerous precedent we have to set. Like, we do need skilled, educated people doing something like medicine.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I feel like, when we talk about things like community gardening, when we talk about things like, like you're saying, like basically redeveloping your neighborhood, there does need to be, tying it back in with what we were saying earlier, there needs to be education. There needs to be expertise that we can actually develop. When you look at the communists in China, how Mao said, you need to go into every single village, every single province, and methodically and scientifically determine what is needed, what the people want, train their experts. What did they call them? The barefoot doctors, where you would go to a village and that would be part of your medical school.
Oh God, I don't know.
Oh, Chris just texted me. Hold on. I think he somehow got booted. I don't even know if we're still on. Oh, he just cut out. Hang on. But I think everyone in the US, the leftists, they want to cut to the romantic part. They want to cut to the liberal ideal part of, let's just start shooting things and vanquishing our enemies. But it's like, no, that's not something you are even remotely prepared to do. And even if you did it, it wouldn't be effective. Like what you're saying, there needs to be a mass community base.
Well, and if I can add to that, what the big part of what people aren't willing to do is actually like divest from the state. I mean, how many of us know many of our friends that are still actively investing in US stocks, or, like placing their money in US banks with a lot of plans to like save up for a house in the US? I don't know. We need to start rethinking our choices if we are actually going to divest from this state that is choking us out. So there's a little bit of personal work that needs to be done on what we're willing to sacrifice in terms of today's comforts for our children's future. I don't know.
Well, what does that sacrifice look like for your? I mean, because the house thing, I don't know anybody who has a house and will own a house, and so generationally, I think we can, safely rule that. But
I think when we talk about like what allows revolution to happen, what allows things like regime change or coup to happen, it requires a population that is so disconnected from the state that they have less to lose in rebelling against it than they do in remaining and suffering under it. And many people in the US are still under the assumption that if they work hard enough or vote the right way or we just haven't figured out the right match, like we haven't put the puzzle together of democracy in the right way. We haven't figured out the right way to I don't know what you guys haven't worked out in 250 some years of bullshit, but there's a desire, exactly what you're talking about, this romantic desire to figure it out, be the generation that fixes it all and doesn't have to burn it all down. But I don't know, we're in kind of an ecological, economic, and sociological crisis in just every aspect of the globe. I don't know what we can do to continue beating this dead horse that will possibly create a different outcome. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading recently about China's green development. If anybody here is on Substack, they should, one, check out Angie's Substack. It's fantastic. And two, they should also check out the Journal of International Solidarity, where there's a great article about China's green development. And China is very meticulously planning how to prepare for global warming, like worst case scenario climate catastrophes. They are mapping out green zones for populations in vulnerable areas to move to, which is, by the way, what they've been doing in Cuba for years now. Like, Cuba has a very comprehensive hurricane preparedness system where they will, again, relocate people to safety, protect certain infrastructure. The way they construct is very heavily regulated to make sure it's hurricane prepared. This is something that in the US, as somebody who had to evacuate twice during the fires in LA last year, This is not something we have in the US. There is, like, I think what Angie is saying, there are people who are invested in the state in the US, but when push comes to shove, the state will not be there for you. The
Exactly.
state will not care. The state, you are on your own when it comes to times of crisis. But, you know, obviously we can get into the financial markets of, like you're saying, invest in American stocks. How much of that is tied to the bond market, to the petrodollar? But Chris, were we live while you were gone? I don't know.
I think so. Yeah. And there's
Okay.
still people watching. So thank God for that. But yeah, I'm poor, so I don't have the best stuff. Wi-Fi comes in a trickle. So yeah. So what do you think is what's going to cure this? Is there hope? What's the strategy that we're supposed to be using? Obviously, if the cops are coming in to like bust people's heads open for feeding the homeless, that's a good start. That's obviously pissing them off. That's probably is that what you're saying? Like to build a community, be resilient. What else can you really do?
I think we need to really, like, in our community spaces, be looking for ways to be not in any way isolationist or self-sufficient, but self-reliant when the state will abandon us, because the state has abandoned us in more ways than one. The state has abandoned us. The state will send your sons to die in wars. The state will happily send your kids to college and tell them to get degrees costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars that will then leave them stranded without employment because AI has taken all of their jobs.
And never tell them about Marx either.
Absolutely.
They'll learn that through Twitter.
All of these things, and it is. I mean, anything you think the state won't do, it has already. Yeah. So we need to start thinking about, like, I have more in common with a peasant in Spain or a opera singer in Vietnam or a like dentistry student in Iran than I do with anyone in the top tax bracket in the US. And we need to start thinking about how we connect to those people now that we actually have the tools to, in ways that are meaningful and are not just like manufacturing emojis to signal our like ideological frameworks. I don't care if you're a Marxist Leninist or a Stalinist. I care what you're doing today and tomorrow and the next day.
Thank God for that. I've had a bunch of these types on my show, and then I walked away thinking, is there something wrong with me, or is that what communism is? Am I supposed to just put this stuff in my bio? I didn't. Yeah.
Well, like you were saying, I think with living in a world dominated by tech, politics almost becomes just an extension of individual expressionism. Like it's not, something you practice in your everyday life. It's something that you just use as a signifier on social media apps. But I wanted to pose a question to both of you. When we're talking about building what effectively amounts to a social, I don't want to say safety net, but just services that the state is not giving us. What do you say to the people, the great folks in the Democratic Socialists of America, who think that if we can just get a Mamdani or an AOC to do things like push for a Green New Deal or get a free grocery store in New York City, that will help improve the lot of Americans? Like, what do you say
Angie?
to that strategy?
Angie?
How much time have you got? I mean, my first point would be that a lot of Americans don't live in New York. Like, my second point would be you've got more than enough AOCs. You've had your chances, and what have they done? There does need to be a moment of like, we're doing a lot of historical revisionism, I think, when we ask or pose these questions as if they're even valid to begin with. Like to say that AOC has been anything but a sellout since the moment she took office, and frankly, long before, for anyone who was willing to look into her actual background and her academic roots. It's embarrassing. I don't know. I expect more from us. We are the wealthiest nation in the world. We all have required schooling. Neurons should be firing.
You know that Joe Biden finished like 198 out of a class of 200, something like this.
Wait,
It's embarrassing.
where did he go to school?
Let me look it up. I'll look it up.
I mean, not that it's purely meritocratic in terms of what institution you attend. I'm just curious.
I think about like growing up in Syria, my parents had to kick and scratch my cousins, everyone who was still in school in Syria in their kind of high school years. It was like fighting tooth and nail to get to like match into a English major. There, like you have to be just 100% constantly to be a medical doctor, let alone be thinking about leading a head of state. Not anymore, but back then. So
I was gonna say
it's just baffling now to see the US where it's just like,
yeah,
come on over.
Yeah, it's hubris. It was hubris. They rested on their laurels. They financialized the economy, hollowed it out, and thought that we'll just make Haiti make our t-shirts at gunpoint for the next 50 years until, and it's short-sighted, short-term profits is the ideology.
I had this thought. This is very reductive and not very
76 out of a class of 85.
Oh, that's Syracuse. Even worse.
Syracuse University.
That's even worse. I mean, let's be real. He's only ever president because Obama needed a quote unquote moderate VP to win over the centrists of the
moderate is so funny. Oh, my head hurts.
But I've been wondering, I've been thinking about this. There's something to be said. This is not very scientific. This is not very, Marxist of me. But when we look at Iran and China, for that matter, and Syria, these are places with hundreds of years of civilization that people can look to, where statecraft and the art of war, for example, has been refined down to a science. And there's references, whether it's literally Sun Tzu's The Art of War, or, that anything that any of the many Persian authors wrote during the Islamic Golden Age. The U.S., what did Benedict Arnold say? The U.S. is just something like a fiction. It's not an actual country. There is no deep tradition of higher learning or of even the American philosophical school is. I mean, you have Emerson and Thoreau and a bunch of weird structuralists from the Cold War who, don't really dabble in anything serious, just a lot of continental adjacent people. Like, there is no deeper learning that happens in American history. It is a country whose foundations are erected on capital accumulation, and it has not progressed past that. Even in Syria, you have, obviously, as a nation state, it's only existed for, about not even a century, but, it has a very deep tradition of science, of mathematics, of education, just as Iran does. When we talk about the Iranian delegation having PhDs, Pete Hegseth went to Harvard. He's certainly not smart. Trump went to UPenn, Wharton, technically an Ivy League. According to his sister, he paid someone to take his SATs, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. And the commodification of education by itself, to say, the strength of the nation will persist, but we're going to make everybody very, very stupid in the meantime. That's just not going to work. And then they go to build a semiconductor plant in Arizona, don't have the people to do it because nobody is smart enough to build it. And they, like we said last week, bring in the engineers from South Korea to build you a factory, and then ICE comes and kidnaps them on accident. So this is it's not even on purpose. It's just their ideology is now eating itself like a snake eating its own tail, with the help of technology and the way that technology has funneled all this money to really, really rich people. So we have this Gilded Age that's far crazier, to where I keep telling my wife this, at the end of the day, it's just going to be one guy that knows the code to the robots, and then everybody else living in some kind of Snowpiercer hellhole reality, because there would be nothing stopping this fella from doing that.
It's Ready Player One, that terrible.
Haven't seen
Spielberg-
that.
It's terrible. It's that terrible Spielberg movie.
I like the doom. I like the doom and gloom stuff. I do.
See, my problem is that like the Marcusian in me hears that and is like, there's a world where that robot comes around and we all get to live in utopia and everyone dabbles in their hobbies and we all live in this like intellectual, spiritual enlightenment while all of our Maslow's hierarchy of needs is met. But what the hell?
That sounds good.
That road is so ambiguous. Like I think I believe it's an essay on liberation. He ends it with just the concept of in a state of liberation, we would be free to think of what to do. We're not there yet. We don't have that freedom yet. We need to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
we have things to prevent, unfortunately.
Have either of you been keeping up
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
the controversy behind Gabriel Rockhills, who paid the pipers of Western Marxism?
Stop it to
Do
me.
you guys know the book?
No.
It's really interesting.
I'm
Gabriel
American. I don't read a lot. So
No, it's okay. I mean, I asked ChatGPT to summarize the text for me, and it hallucinated something about I don't know, like Bugs Bunny or something. But no, I thought it was no. Gabriel Rockhill, brilliant scholar. His thesis is that the Western Marxist tradition, building off of Domenico Losurdo's text on Western Marxism, is largely based off of these fundamentally anti-communist rationales that come from attacking actually existing socialist states that say things like, you know, the Marcusian vague, ambivalent, and eventually everything will be happy. And, you know, like when you look at the 60s, for example, these critical theorists align themselves with students who were also very misguided. I mean, if you want to look at how not to do a revolution, look at the many failed revolutions that France has had. Really, since ever since Napoleon, from Napoleon onward, I mean, the French Revolution succeeded, but then, you know, you can argue it sort of faltered after Napoleon, but that's neither here nor there. It was so fragile in 1968 that these critical theorists who were aligned with the students, who then very, very briefly allied with themselves with the workers, all de Gaulle had to do was split the two. De Gaulle very masterfully just cut a deal with the workers, the unions, that left the students out, that alienated the communist, the Western Marxist part of the movement in 68. And that's part of what Western Marxism is. It's decoupling Marxism from dialectical materialism, where you don't have a material analysis, where, you know, I mean, no offense to Marcuse, I've read a few works of him myself, but, you know, you don't have a material analysis of the world around you. You just talk about how great it would be to live in a world post-capitalism, and you write about the problems of capitalism. And I also think this is something that we see proliferating in the influencer space on social media today, where people just rail about capitalism. They rail against American democracy, but they never actually present any alternatives that have been tried and tested in the real world. They don't talk about the Soviet Union. They say that China is an authoritarian police state, Iran is an authoritarian theocracy, et cetera, et cetera.
Yugoslavia.
Yeah, right. Yugoslavia. Yeah. And yeah.
Well, how many of us were taught about Yugoslavia in any formal context outside
I
of
never did.
Yeah,
that's why I said it. I was so excited. I was like, I didn't know this.
I mean, we're arguably intentionally so. I mean, I don't think our curriculums are created in any vacuum. There's, speaking from the Syrian context, pre-2019, there's a reason that our educational curriculum looked the way that it did. And it was because we understood that we existed in a very freshly and still colonial context. So we had to understand what it meant to be a nation state and what it meant to lose that nation state, and what our role in our environment, in our state, in our people. Like, I'm trying to think of kind of an English translation for the word I want to use, but within our larger community of the nation, what our role is in keeping it alive and keeping it sovereign. what sovereignty means for us. So the way that we were taught history was shaped by that need. And I think that the lack of urgency, maybe just not having experienced war on its soil, the US doesn't feel the urgency to prioritize historical learning in any real and reflective way. I mean, I don't know if you studied just the 20th century with any real honesty and genuine like insight, you would not be able to come to the conclusions that many Americans do today about the 21st century.
Yeah, they're disconnected from real trauma, and so now they prioritize things that don't matter, and then they just do poly market bets on whether or not they can invade some sovereign nation or something, you know.
Well, what conclusion would
It's not funny. But I'm laughing.
Like me when I say this. They don't like me when I get to the conclusion.
They're going to have to go through a hell of a lot in order to have they don't get the historical amnesia, and they don't get soft and think that, oh yeah, well, I'll just go to McDonald's and everything will be fine. Although the gas is more expensive. What the fuck is going on? Like, they have to learn. And like Syria, how has that changed over the years? I mean, what is that? Obviously, I don't know a lot about it, but it's like rocky colonialist start, and then still, with the CIA and Operation Timber Sycamore starting the Syrian civil war. What's it like there? Give me the scoop.
We are in what some would call a transitionary period at this point since the fall of Bashar al-Assad. Now, I mean, coming on 2 years ago in a few more months, I will not call this a transitionary period with any good faith. We're in really kind of just a free-for-all of maybe failed statehood in whatever meaning of that term you want to take. A lot of the social structure of the state that hadn't already collapsed under the pressure of sanctions and a decade of civil war has now been almost intentionally obliterated, if not redirected towards sources that will create revenue for mainly the capital and those that are investing in it. There's been a series of oil deals, and I believe one that's Azerbaijani. So it's just, we're getting in bed. I say we, being the Syrian government, is getting in bed with everyone they said that they were against, claimed to be against. But anyone who has, looked at the Syrian civil war and examined the actors knows who has acted together and who has acted on opposite sides, I think. We're in a point where the people who have acted together largely have now been able to bring one of their own into the Syrian government and legitimize him beyond really a shadow of a doubt. I'm afraid we're at the point where we're Jordanifying Syria to an extent.
But it's also, I mean, Al-Jawlani, this guy, for those of you who don't know, he helped found Al-Qaeda in Syria. He was literally the head of, I mean, Jabhat al-Nusra, correct me with the pronunciation there, was literally just the Al-Qaeda branch of Syria that he was the head of. Through various turns of events, they go to Turkey, they rebrand themselves as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. What does that translate to, by the way?
Like the soldiers for the freedom of Damascus, sort of.
Just literally just
valiant freers of Damascus. We live in an Arabic world of irony when it comes to the Arabic language, because you can just name yourself anything.
Yeah.
There he is. There's our boy.
This fella.
That's my president, unfortunately. Everyone who had anything to say about Bashar al-Assad, I hope that you are ready to say it and say more about this one, because I have gotten to say everything I needed to say about Bashar al-Assad now that he is no longer in power and my family is not under threat. but I don't hear people talking about him.
He's a brilliant leader guided by God. What are you talking about? He's made so. Yes, he refused to shake that EU
First
woman.
Damascus, then Jerusalem, baby.
Meanwhile, I mean the idiocy of that. What did I see last week with the first Damascus then Jerusalem people? I mean, he then one of the first things he did was kick out all the Palestinian factions who
One
had
of the
been there.
first things that he did was allow Israel to decimate every major military site in Syria, was allow them to decimate all of the military capability of the Syrian state. That was the first thing he allowed them to do within days of taking over.
And let's be clear, Israel still fucking hates him. Like, Israel still hates him. They still think, I mean, they're mistrustful of any Islamists in general. Saudi doesn't like him. But the thing is, it doesn't even matter because their only objective was to get rid of Assad. Because he was the only person in Syria who actually posed a threat to Israel and to the, broady Wahhabi designs for the region. There's something I wanted to say that Syria did recently. They did something. I'm trying to remember. I'm looking through my.
There's a list. There's a long.
But this more specifically is. Well, I'll find it eventually. But I will say it's sort of funny how now they're frantically trying to rebrand him because was it last year he refused to shake the hand of a European female delegate, and then he went there recently. He shook their hand, and then they posted that video of him watching that dance troupe dancing to a Missy Elliott song.
Dude,
By the way, what a trip! Just like coming from me, I saw this man on Al Jazeera in like 2016. To then see him in the great year of our Lord 2026, like head bopping to Missy Elliott. Where am I?
Bro, somebody went to one of these high-priced PR boot camps that rich people go to and got them all briefed on how to be, how to act. Don't do this, don't do that. Take off the Al-Qaeda costume and put on a suit. That's it.
But that is what it is, though. It's him. Like, they're trying to rebrand him as this democratic leader, despite the fact that no elections are taking place in any substantial, meaningful sense of the word. He's a self-declared president. I mean, there's this incredibly bad faith attempt for all the people who, and I want to say this is also a problem within the Palestine circles within the West too. There was this sharp divide between the Assadists, quote unquote, who really just understood what was happening, and the people who just drank the Al Jazeera Kool-Aid and said, "Oh well, Assad is a dictator. This is a democratic movement for freedom." That just so happens to also have the fingerprints of the CIA and the Mossad and MI6 and Jordan and Saudi Arabia and Qatar
and ISIS.
Literally,
we're still waiting. We're still waiting on really definitive proof that the U.S. and Israel have created these directly or funded them directly. But I have my suspicions. It seems like they've rarely attacked Israel. Maybe they attacked them once, but they really didn't do anything. But ISIS is never in Israel.
Israel was ground lifting members of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham to treat them for wounds, and the Free Syrian Army to treat them for wounds. Like, let's be so. The Australian Air Defense Forces were killing Syrian soldiers of the Syrian army to defend Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and ISIS under the USC. Like.
Vice literally did a news report from an Israeli hospital in Israel where they were treating these guys. Like, this is not some conspiracy theory. There's hard evidence of it all over the internet.
Give me more. Give me some more. I'm learning.
I have a whole document I'll send over. I've added more to it over the years. Angie
and Jaleesa Dugro have been working on a fantastic documentary. Again, we can talk about this. This could be a podcast episode on its own about the human rights complex in the United States.
Okay. Amnesty, Human Rights Watch.
Yeah, no, they did the great documentary that's in the editing stages still about the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights?
Network.
Yes.
Syrian Network, the Syrian Network
Syrian
for
Network for Human Rights.
Yes,
Yes.
founded
Cool.
by Fadi Abdul Ghani. We did a complete investigative report. I started off just really baffled by their numbers and their reporting of the overall victim toll of civilians killed across the Syrian civil war and combatants killed. And just looking at their numbers, I mean, my background, I've done this type of research. I know kind of methodologically what should go into human rights reporting. Like, it's not something you get to make up your own rules for. We have standards for it internationally so that we know what we're talking about. I really did, like, I went on their website, I clicked methodology, I pulled up the document and was immediately able to discern that they do not distinguish between armed combatants and civilians. So anyone they found as a deceased person, regardless of whether they were able to potentially tie them to any armed combatant group, would be counted as a civilian as long as they had probable deniability. So they were able to skew the data while being the number one most cited source by the US State Department on Syria for over a decade. And
every news outlet for that matter.
Absolutely. And kind of discounting and creating narratives of doubt around many of their competitors. I hate using that word in this context, but organizations that were doing similar work. Meanwhile, those organizations, the Syria Justice and Accountability Center in particular, were under direct violence within Syria, with many of their members being kidnapped, I believe in 2013, if memory serves. And no information has ever surfaced on them. But those organizations are relegated to like second tier status, while the SNHR, the Syrian Network for Human Rights, which one of their founders is now also the Minister of Information of Syria. And another one
That's right.
has ties to Qatargate. I should stop.
Yeah. No, I heard this. I actually heard this because this was included in a piece that me and my buddy put together. And yeah, it was like all the things that Amnesty International did wrong, and they did it in Syria, and they relied on the SOHR. Yeah, I forgot about that.
This is literally everyone who told you Assad is a brutal dictator who's killed millions of Syrians. It's like, no,
right.
It's not, again, and it's not to say that the Syrian proxy war.
Him. No one loved that man. We just really understood what it meant to us to lose the last stronghold, like the last iron in the fire of Syrian sovereignty. We had nothing else. I mean, throughout the Syrian civil war, truly, were it not for the Syrian army and Hezbollah, many Christian villages would not exist. There are many bloodlines that would have been wiped out, that were wiped out. We don't talk about Iraq, the Iraqi aspect of the Syrian civil war either, because the genocide of the Yazidis was concurrent with that crisis. And they weren't happening kind of in vacuums. They were very much parts of the same larger violent brawl that was just kind of tearing the greater Levant apart at this critical time when Israel was sort of taking a back seat in Middle Eastern politics. And it's not like it shouldn't be that. We should be suspicious of the fact that, like, Israel's war with Lebanon ends, Syria's war ignites, and then for a decade and a half, Israel sits quietly until they're able to ignite something with Gaza, start something with Lebanon, and then trickle it all into the fall of Assad. We should start to see patterns.
For those of you who weren't following that as closely as we were, by the way, within weeks of the ceasefire in Lebanon being declared in late 2024, that is when HTS with the Syrian National Army, which is really just the Turkish army, marches into Syria.
I need to really quickly clarify. I'm so sorry, because I wrote an article that was meant to be published, but things were just happening too quickly that it was outdated by the time. The ceasefire in Lebanon is announced, and in the same speech, Netanyahu tells Bashar al-Assad to watch himself and to act with caution. For the previous, this is happening in October, late October, early November, I believe.
Yeah.
For the previous 4 months, Turkey, Erdogan had been trying to reopen doors to talks with Damascus. And Bashar al-Assad's one stipulation was that Turkey would get the hell out of northeast Syria. Wasn't going to happen. Within hours of that speech, movement is happening at the Turkish border. This was all orchestrated 100% between Israel, from Israel to Turkey to the US. This was so orchestrated that if you have, I mean, just Occam's razor just needs to come in here. Like
Right.
this isn't all coincidence. We need to be critical of what's happening on a global
Motivations and incentives tell you a lot. Pretty much all you need to know.
And we should be clear. HDS did not actually topple Assad. HDS's role was not nearly as big as the Syrian National Army, which was it was the Turkish army rebranded as a Syrian expeditionary force. Like it was the Turkey really did take over Syria. Like it was after years. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to just say, for all of the upset that the Lebanese have over the period of Syrian occupation, this is not all that different. Frankly, it's quite reminiscent.
And there are a lot of Lebanese who insist that Iran is, occupying their country now. But I also think, when we talk about Yugoslavia, Rania Kalik did a really good piece during the height of the Syrian civil war about the Yazidis and the genocide that occurred. And there's one detail that will always stick with me. She said that she interviewed one Yazidi girl who, these women were trafficked into sex slavery by ISIS and other, Salafi militias. And she said that the guard of the women when these guys took over was her Sunni school teacher. It was her science teacher who then, because these Sunni supremacists essentially took over the town, immediately stepped into this position of privilege and guarded these women as they were being systemically raped. And I think that is the real model for Syria, is something like what you saw in Yugoslavia, where all of these tensions, all these nationalist fervors just start uniting and they divide the country. And then that strategy failed ultimately to topple Assad at first. So then Turkey comes in with a more centralized approach, basically uses its army with HDS as this, tumorous outgrowth. And
as the
now,
face.
Right. They were the indigenous legitimate face. And now that same process is being repeated on a governmental level. Alawis are being displaced. It's literally copy and paste what's happening to the West Bank under Israeli occupation. These Sunni supremacist families are getting to settle onto homes and lands that were Alawi. And, those who don't know, Alawi was the sect that Bashar al-Assad belonged to. And if somebody who doesn't know what the hell they're talking about will tell you, the Sunnis were systemically oppressed under Assad. It was an Alawi. That's also not true. Alawis were some of the poorest Syrians under Assad.
And I will add, have like a history of subjugation and oppression by the other sects within Islam in Syria. They were, prior to and under the reign of both Hafiz and Bashar al-Assad, were often relegated to the poorest areas of the country. They were relegated to the countrysides, often in villages, often working, their farmer trades. They were working the land. They were the perception of Alawites as being this favored class was not at all reality.
And now, again, now Alawi women are being sex trafficked into slavery by governmental forces. I don't want to say, they're direct HDS policemen in every case, because, like Angie can attest, the government very rarely exists outside of Damascus in Syria. It's a lot of, decentralized.
That's intentional, isn't it?
Right.
Because
yeah. Right.
If you don't formalize your army, if you don't formalize your national police, you have plausible deniability to the one bad apple that goes and does something wrong in Hama, or the one bad apple that's trafficking girls in Tartus. You have that ability to say, oh my God, no, I didn't train him. I didn't give him that gun. You
But
haven't drawn that line, but
then
I mean,
Reuters. Oh, sorry. Go on.
no, please go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but Reuters, anyone who read Reuters during the Syrian civil war can attest, they were no friend of Assad or any other actor in Syria for that matter. They said that the orders to start massacring all those Alawite families on the coast last year came from Damascus. The orders to do these horrific atrocities, from literally massacring families to sex trafficking women, they came from Damascus. Then we saw the same thing happen with Druze, with the Kurds. This is a systemic attempt to establish Sunni supremacy. And, I know people get pissed off at me for saying that. Zionism is Jewish supremacy. Let's just call that what it is. American capitalism is white supremacy. This is just a sectarian ingrowth.
And it's important to kind of remember that it is supremacy in name only. Ethiopian Jews are not treated like the superior class in Israel in the same way that the poor Sunnis in Syria will not see the benefits of being Sunni. In the same, it really does still boil down to class in any way.
What's the distinction there that makes them? Obviously, the Sunnis are the Gulf state fellas, and then the Shiites are the Iranians, right? I'm an idiot.
No,
I'm sitting here listening.
Generally speaking, yes, that's the faith breakdown. It's just different.
But there was a fork at some point within the the Quran, and
that precedes, they're just prophets kind of. I'm not even a very good scholar or a good dictator of this history because I'm Christian. So I'm great at dictating all of the Christian splits. I've got you covered on that. But they're essentially, as the prophet is continuing and the lineage of the prophet continues, there are different theological interpretations and the sects break off from there. So you have Sufism, you have Shia Islam, you have Alawites, and then you have other manifestations of faith that are also existing outside of that.
If you're like Angie and I and you were raised Christian, you're going to, when you hear the difference between Sunni and Shia, you're going to be like, wait, that's it? Like after centuries of Christians arguing over so many weird hair-splitting details, it's really just, who is directly related to the prophet versus who isn't. That's really it. But I mean, and even Alawites, for example, they're really just sort of a splinter from Shiism. But Correct. Even then, it's very closed. Like I've even spoken to people with Alawite ancestry who can't really articulate everything that makes sense.
Alawites even often identify more as like an ethnic, not necessarily an ethnic group, but a lineage, a closed religion in the same way that Druze and Yazidis do.
I don't understand, but what makes them be able to be religious as Sunnis, but then have this awful system with the kafala system and the hierarchies and it's kind of dark and weird. I guess we all weaponize religion to fit whatever thing we want to do, I guess, but is there something specific in there that they're?
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood of the 1920s really helped craft, like Sayyid al-Qutb. Like they helped craft a program where, there's a really good book about political Islam. I have to dig it up, but it goes into this detail about how, they're the quietists who say that you should just struggle internally and not interfere politically. And very conveniently, those schools of thought prevail in these Gulf monarchies. But a large part of this also has to do with the fact that, like Saudi Arabia, it may surprise people to know, was more or less a fairly Western-ish country until the Islamic Revolution in Iran. And it was then that the Saudi monarchy got fearful of the clergy because they were like, okay, well, if they can overthrow the Shah in Iran, we need to start giving them more power. And that's when in Saudi Arabia, you start seeing things like men and women who aren't married being stopped on the street and asked what their business being together is, or, all women's spaces, women being, totally covered, women not being able to drive. It's like literally just fear of an Islamic revolution in Saudi Arabia, where the Wahhabi doctrine and the Salafi doctrines really start spreading into other states. And that's where you get theological justifications for things.
Okay. Like, the Salafis and what was it? What?
Wahhabi.
I almost said wasabi. Jesus Christ.
I'll add, just as like a general rule, you should be suspicious of any context where faith is being conflated with the state.
Yeah.
I don't say
absolutely.
that from like a separation of church and state thing, because there are contexts in which faith can coexist with the state. But for a group to operate as if the faith somehow imbibes them with the right to govern, or that the state is somehow built upon a particular faith, like we should be critical essentially when faith is built into empire in any way,
Oh,
at
God.
any scale.
I mean, look, this is like a human thing, no matter what. If you go from evidence-based to faith-based thinking, you're going to have a bad time. I don't see any way around that. And then the
Great time. You're going to have a much easier time justifying it to yourself.
oh yeah, it doesn't matter. Anything that they can't answer, they don't want to do, they just say, "Oh well, God told me that it would be okay." And Iran, for some reason, is leading with women in science, but yet still has that theological backbone. But
I
again,
think so much of that comes from kind of the fear of Western propaganda, the fear of like, if we loosen a little, we lose it all.
yeah,
There's a very good article in Middle East Critique that actually addresses that, where even before, like during the democratic phases of Iran pre-Shah, when there was a constitutional revolution, there was a movement for women to start wearing hijabs. They came grassroots because they saw it as a rejection of Western colonialism. And I think, there's also something to be said. Fanon writes about this, where the desire of the colonizer is to see the Algerian woman unmasked, unveiled. It's sort of a safeguard from the eye of the sexualizing oppressor. But that's not to say, and I don't know if I told you this before, Chris, but in the last couple of years, the hijab has not been enforced in Iran because they elected the reformist candidate. I won't try to pronounce his name. My Farsi is terrible, but which I'm non-existent. But he told the police, like, look, guys, if you see a woman wearing a hijab, great. If you don't see her wearing one, just let it be. All right. If you see it loose, just let it be. This isn't worth the headache. And I have. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, I was just saying, I saw a video too that it was at the beaches. It's optional. Like they can wear it, they cannot wear it. And then there was a journalist out in the street saying, "I don't have my thing on." Big whoop, and everybody's going by. And it's like, yeah, I
have an interview coming out with the great scholar Mathis Azarmandi, who wrote a fantastic piece for Al Rifaq. That's going to be on VPOL. Check for that wherever you get your social media news. And she talks about how when we think about places like Iran, we conceive of them as being frozen in time from when the West was last present. Like we conceive of Iran as 1979, fresh off the heels of the Islamic Revolution. And we forget all of the dialectical and dynamic changes that have happened within that society since then. There have been a lot of movements for reform. Even, like what you were saying, Chris, about women leading in science. You can say all you want about Iranian women being oppressed. I personally, I'm a man. I'm not going to weigh in on that too much. But, the literacy rates are higher for Iranian women, significantly higher post-Islamic Revolution than they were before it.
They were 60% of them were illiterate before the revolution. And that increased a lot in the 90s when they had they pushed them more into science as a way for national strength. This is what I understood. This is what I read. And now, yeah. Anyway, go on.
No, you're exactly right. There's a very good book I recommend everybody read called Revolution and Its Discontents that talks about the process of building this Islamic revolutionary society in Iran. And like any revolution, you can study this in a communist context, in a bourgeois democratic context. It doesn't matter. Any revolution is messy and rife with contradictions. And an Islamic revolution is no exception, specifically in this context. I know people try to say the Syrian proxy war was a revolution. I don't think we can call it revolutionary in any sense of the word, because it was really grafted onto the country. It was not a grassroots uprising in the way that the Islamic Revolution was, for example. But they talk about how there was a very, even as far back as the 90s and early 2000s, they realized that they needed more women in politics. But even then, there were debates among scholars as to how women should contribute to a political thought within the country. So again, you need to realize that any society, especially when it comes to something like Iran, is not stagnant and immutable. It has actors with agency that are pushing and making things different. I mean, if you talk to your average American about the Soviet Union, they'll tell, or China for that matter, they will tell you that it's this fixed authoritarian dictatorship where citizens are too afraid to speak their mind, because if they don't, they'll be sent to a mandatory labor camp or a gulag. Like, that's just fundamentally not true. But when your knowledge on a subject is so limited, you're going to just keep it at the baseline at which you were taught, which is why, you know, Angie said that there are a lot of influencers who are propagating some interesting things. I feel like a lot of people on the left in the West, the refrain was, two things can be true at once on Iran. It's both evil and the United States is bad and shouldn't bomb it. And it's like, yeah, that's how brave of you. Thank you to say both things are bad.
I can't find it on a map, but I know that I'm supposed to hate it, and I've heard bad things. And even though I don't trust the media, I still listen to them about this. That's where we're at. Cognitive dissonance.
It was the start of the war with Iran was the first time I thought people had like really contemplated what it would be like if someone tried to do that in the US. And it's like, you guys might need a regime change soon. I feel like you need some UN intervention. It's not going well. Like, there's a lot to be said here. There's something about having to like reckon with, we're doing something really bad, but I guess you deserve it, even though we're doing the same thing here. What different? Because people love to call Iran a theocracy, but if we want to use that term, we can apply that term in the US. It's not hard to extrapolate that definition to the US.
I always thought I thought people that were being brain dead liberals would see the Maduro thing and then be like, well, Trump did that. That's bad. I'm like, yeah, it's bad. And that they would go read about the guy rather than try to get to the truth and have critical thinking skills about it and say, well, why is he bad? Like, I questioned Kim Jong-un 6 years ago. I said, wait a minute, this guy's bad. What did he do exactly? What's his big crime? How many people did he kill or whatever? Oh, all right. So I find out.
Yeah, there's something to be said about how Americans, I think there's this weird shift happening where, because of Trump especially, there's a greater lack of faith in American institutions, possibly than since the time of either Nixon or the Civil War, where your average American does not trust the state and yet still believes it's propaganda. So, you know, they are against a war, but they support the justifications for it. I mean,
this dives into what I'm passionate about, which is seeing geopolitics through the lens of zoology, which is what my first love was, ecology and nature and shit like this. And I just see humans in this way. That's why I'm vegan, of course. I love animals, do the animal rights thing, but I see so much, you know, chimpanzee or whatever in what we're doing, where I'm not surprised, and that propaganda is so pervasive, and that all of the things, the opioid crisis and the obesity crisis and the glyphosate and the microplastics and the constant barrage of violence and the mind-numbing entertainment that's, you know, very primitive and reptilian-brained TikTok videos, people putting Mentos in Coke. It's bad on all fronts, and I think that we're maybe just turning a corner with our evolution to a point where, like school shootings and burning things down is really the only thing that average Americans can do to express themselves about their political identity, or, set themselves on fire, because there is a bit of a hopelessness there too, where they don't know what else to do. And they have to somehow, be able to shoot people in between their shifts at doing DoorDash and sleeping in their cars. I don't think that there's much hope on the horizon for Americans to figure it out and say, we're going to take it a different direction. I see more cognitive dissonance. I see more misplaced anger and wild bursts of violent energy and stupidity too. And like AI videos now all the time where like real videos, they go, it's AI. And then there's like really fake videos that are like, that happened. It's really dangerous. It's a dangerous, stupid time to be alive.
Somehow I fear more of those AI fruit videos are.
Which one?
Like you don't know? Angie, do you know what I'm talking about?
I
AI
do.
fruit.
I'm afraid I do.
Those are worse, a greater threat to civilization than like Trump deep fakes. They're picture the worst plot of like, I don't even know how I can describe it without getting your channel banned. Picture like the worst plot of. Yeah, no, let's just move on. Let's move on from AI fruit.
It's bad. Okay, I get it. I'm reading it.
Oh, you okay?
Listen, I will say there is a general like lack of humility when it comes to the American ability to like politically reflect. When I tell people America is unfortunately going to have to suffer a little bit, it's not because I hate everyone. It's not because I think that like marginalized groups of Americans have not already suffered. It's not because Black Americans didn't suffer and are not suffering. It's not because Native Americans have not perpetually suffered. It's because living in this country means that for whatever it's worth, you have relished in the rewards of the violence your state has committed overseas. And eventually that violence runs out over there and they start doing it here.
Yeah.
They've been doing it, but they'll do it.
Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say that like the violence of police brutality or of slavery is horrific, and it's not to say that we're like oppression Olympicsing, but it's not bombs, it is not decades and generations of war, it is not the highest population of child amputees on the face of the earth. It's not those things. And to act as if the kind of socioeconomic and like racial ethnic trauma that exists in the United States is in any way the same as that and somehow absolves Americans from any need to like meaningfully sacrifice for the greater global good is it's asinine. I don't know how to like more gently give that to people.
Yeah, they were talking about soft people who are incapable of making that connection and saying, yeah, the Palestine thing, that's over there, and that'll never come here, which it's been talked about, the imperial boomerang or whatever, right? The thing that comes back, the shit that they're doing to everybody else, they'll very easily do to us when they run out or when they get chased off of all these. They'll get chased out of Africa eventually. They'll get chased out of these places with China giving better deals and everything, that they'll just bring it home and build huge detention facilities. You'll love this. You're speaking of like people don't get it. I told him last week, I wrote an article about the private equity closing down hospitals and making it so people are actually just dying. And I put the whole thing and people are like, oh, I'm so shocked. I'm so shocked. And then at the end, I put a quote by Mao that says healthcare should be a human right. And they go, whoa, man, whoa. It's like, do you disagree with it or what? What are you going to do?
Well, Angie, you said something earlier about how the U.S. has never seen a war. I mean, the truth is, the last time there was active combat, if we want to define a war in the narrowest sense, was the 1920s when the U.S. assaulted one of the, I forget which indigenous nation it was. The last time the U.S. had a conflict with any parity on its soil was the U.S. Civil War, which was very literally a war to preserve slavery.
That,
And I, I'm not saying we're anywhere near another civil war now, as much as people want to have, whether, you know, they're far left and far right contingents that probably fantasize about that. It's not going to effing happen. There's very interesting.
The thing is that if it was going to happen, history tells us it's the right that will go to war.
Yeah,
it's
right.
The right that'll go to war to get their way,
Right.
not the left. The left will turn cheeks until, I don't know,
Until they're out of cheeks.
falls into the right. I don't know.
Lincoln literally had no intentions of a nationwide abolitionist program. It was literally just the Confederacy self-fulfilling their own prophecy that Lincoln was going to free the slaves, and then he freed their slaves. Yeah, and I think that's what, I don't know. I mean, the right is organized in some ways, and during the first Trump administration, there were a lot of militias that propped up. I mean, we all remember Charlottesville. I cannot but feel like now those guys have just been absorbed into the state, into DHS, into ICE, because God knows these people don't have any fucking qualifications.
Bro, they algorithmically fucking went after them because now we live in this data-driven age. They know exactly who these people are, how they vote. Oh, you like Trump? You might want to get a $90,000 a year job at ICE. You'd like that. You can finally kill these people that you're crazy about. That's exactly what happened.
And they don't, I mean, they're stupid. Like, I think it was Angie, someone on, I think your Twitter, somewhere on your Twitter, you said, like, the thing is, these ICE agents, they're like Looney Tunes level of stupid sometimes. Like, when you see the way they try to conduct business. And like, you know,
like DHS is hiring children. We get like they're hiring 17 and 18-year-olds at this point too. I mean, I don't like using the word stupid when we're just not frontally lobe developed. Dude,
the age we live in doesn't require like deep analysis on that level. You just go, it's all fucked up. You know, that's my deep.
I'm not even saying this as a more broad moral judge. But I don't say that as a broad moral judgment, by the way, on like if you have conservative politics or if you work for ICE, you are stupid. I'm not saying that. That's a dangerous thing to think, to just assume, you know, these guys are idiots. What it really, I think, belies is a very disorganized merger with the state, where these people, just like, you know, any leftist who thinks they can just bomb and shoot someone and that will spark change. It's the same thing where these guys think that if I just join this, you know, these like World War II-esque posters of defend the homeland and just go and snatch up these gardeners, these landscapers who are providing for their families, that this will cleanse my country of criminal elements. It's like, that's also not, like, these people, the right is in many ways just as politically underdeveloped as the left is in the US. Yeah. I mean,
they're just given more action items than pieces.
Well, well, how can you make a rational decision when all the information that you've been given is absolutely wrong and it's emotionally driven and you're taught to react emotionally to it, and so you end up with two you know, biologically different people. Like they did a study, like left-wing people have these certain characteristics and they're always kind of, they find that similar. You know, liberals like mixed breed dogs that they rescue, and the other ones like the purebred dogs and stuff. And there's all these correlations. They like jazz, and then the other people hate jazz. I like country. There's really correlations that boil down to them. And so then would they just separate them and pander to them and give them these, you know, on a plate, here, fight about these, and then vote, and then go the fuck away.
And the masterful skill of it all is that they're giving them the same talking points and they're fighting on the same side for the same end goal. Like the means may be different, but the ends are the same.
They get the political football, right? The abortion, the
cultural wedge issues,
stuff that doesn't really matter.
You
know, that they can fight over. That drives. It's a universal topic. Even with no end.
I really struggle to give benefit of the doubt there, because if Biden had wanted to enact Roe into law, he could have.
Hmm.
He had years to enact that into law, and Obama could have enacted Roe into. We have been in a place where abortion has been in the public purview and has been discussed outside of the societal taboo for well over 2 decades. There is no reason that Roe was not enacted into law other than the fact the Democratic Party did not want it enacted into law so they could hold it over the heads of their voters.
Yeah. And because the conservatives also want abortion. That's like, it's an overwhelming thing.
Absolutely.
Everybody wants it. And so it became something, well, if we make this, then we can't fight about it anymore.
Well, the abortion became a wedge issue under Reagan, really. Like, it was that alliance he made with the evangelicals where, just to like put the moral majority or the silent, whatever it was.
Bringing religion back into politics and bringing back phrases like "God bless America."
But even then, Reagan, one of his advisors asked him before he went, senile. One of his advisors asked him, like, "Do you really want Roe v. Wade overturned?" And he just laughed at him and said, "Do I look like an idiot?" Like, these people know. Like, I think, especially, I don't know if it was, Obama's post-recession presidency, but I feel like from like 2013 to probably up until COVID, there was like American politics was purely cultural. It was just about culture wars. It was all about trans people competing in sports and, like gay marriage, although that was eventually, overturned. Like, it was just about cultural issues that every time anything topical happened, like Vox would come out and do their pieces about it, and like it would dominate the Twitter sphere. And it, I think, stunted people to the point where reading political theory or reading, like, again, learning how to apply dialectical materialism didn't feel politically relevant. It mattered more on what your stance was about gun control or, like, sometimes I wonder.
Dialectics is just like a euphemism for critical thinking, basically.
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
And also scientific thinking, turning the heat up too high, then turning it down low, and then saying, okay, I was too hot and too cold. Let me even it out. And that's basically common sense to anybody. But then some people don't have that, I guess. Or
well,
that
I
don't know.
I am wondering at this point for the people who are still holding out for Trump, for your average MAGA voter, now that we have sunk billions of dollars into destroying Iran and failing, by the way, now that if you are not one of the 10% of Americans who own 90% of all the stocks, if you are not them, you are having a really fucking hard time right now. Are you really convinced that your life is that much better because, I don't know, you think that now trans girls can't compete in high school sports? Jesus, like, I genuinely don't understand. Like, do you really think your life has improved now?
Dude, they've never seen a trans person in their life, and they're scared to death of them, and they hate them so much, and they make up 1% of the population, if that, and then what percentage of them actually play sports? Yeah. But they are just fucking priority number one. It's crazy, and it's irrational. I think it speaks to what Angie's saying about how soft and comfortable everybody is to be able to make such petty things. Like, you need material strain to really understand what the fuck what politics really is. If you care about organized society, government, for the people, by the people, shit, you should be paying attention. And we have not been paying attention for decades now. And it's going to hurt. I think baby gonna fall down, baby gonna go boom, and it's gonna hurt. And they're just gonna have to pick up the pace. And famines haven't existed a lot in the modern age because of mechanization and stuff, but I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how bad. I don't know how bad it could really get for these people. But the other thing is, China's willing to offer to help rebuild America. Let's reindustrialize you. We'll help. And they're like, no, we're gonna be mean to everybody and bomb people, and whatever's coming next. I don't know. There's something horrible coming next. I feel it.
Well, famine in certain parts of the world will be triggered if the fertilizer can't be shipped through Hormuz. I mean,
that's a real fact. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, you're not talking, unfortunately, about like an abstract, far off possibility.
the precursors to make the fertilizer all come through the strait from places like India and stuff like that. And yeah, that's been said. Big food crisis. Actually, my neighbor, don't tell anybody, everybody, but my neighbor is a economist, agricultural economist that's worked for the FAO. I won't tell you his name, but we fight all the time. I rent this house from him and we fight all the time. And he agreed with me. I wrote an article about it and he says, yeah, we're going to have a food crisis in Europe. Get ready. I was like, all right, thanks for the tip.
So then what do you think what will the outcome of that be? Like when you say food crisis, like what level are we talking? Are we talking higher food prices? Are we talking about total lack of goods and
people
like,
starving in place in the global south, and then people paying higher prices everywhere else. Dude, I just wrote this article about what they're doing in Europe, and they just had the 20th round of sanctions on Russia, which is going to do nothing. They're basically cutting off their leg in order to not shoot themselves in their own foot. And this is basically, Mertz worked for BlackRock for a long time. He's an executive there. And what do? Asset stripping. They're asset stripping out Europe in order to fight a proxy war in Ukraine. And they're going to bankrupt and they're going to go to the last Ukrainian. And they don't give a fuck about the working class people in Europe. And von der Leyen is not a person who's, voted in. She's just there. Nazi princess from a Nazi lineage.
really?
At one point, the RAF was supposedly going to kidnap her, so she had to live in exile in London for a long time like communists have always hated her. Now she comes out with her helmet hair and passes these more sanctions. And the thing is, so the way that the stuff has been flowing, Russia has been avoiding a lot of the sanctions for EU goods coming in because they'll have them sent to Kyrgyzstan and they come out the back door and Russia takes them. Now they're going to, there's always these unmarked vessels that Russia uses to move oil around, and they're going to sanction them and stuff. It's not going to work. They're not going to be able to stamp out fires. Belgium doesn't know how to go out and mitigate what happens on the, on the open seas. And the United States isn't going to come to help them. And Mertz has a fucking popularity rating. 67% of the people don't like him. And 45% of the people in the CDU, his own party, don't like him. And so it's insane. Like Europe might be worse off than the United States is material wise, but there'll still be educated people here, like a little bit more educated people here where maybe they'll maneuver. But also I live here. There's geezers all around me in Germany. Every down the street, it's an aging population. And if the elections were today and AfD would win, they would win the election. They had 29% of the vote. So, and the funny thing about them is they want to have normal relations with Russia. The first day they're going to open up that pipeline and get that Russian gas coming back over Germany. I think, well, that's practical like that. And then they say, but we also going to support Israel to put a wedge in those, in the Islamic world. Like, no, don't do that. So they have to be racist pieces of shit, but they also are the only ones who are talking pragmatically about just be nice to fucking China. They're not going to, they seem to be, there's no evidence that China's out to get anybody, really.
Well, China helped. I mean, they help countries reindustrialize. In some cases, they help, even if they are like in Hungary, even if they are, European, they'll help. So then when we talk about Germany, especially, I mean, part of the reason is just the EU is going to face the brunt, both because of its geostrategic positioning and it's a vassal of the US. Like the US is an accidental empire. It would not have been what it is today if World War I had not happened. If it was not able to buy up Britain's war debt and then survive the onslaught, the total decimation of European industry in World War II, it would still be a second-rate world power. And I think that's what Americans cannot fathom, is that you were not supposed to have been great. You were not supposed to have been a superpower. And even then, when we look at the course of history, it's going to be a blip on the dot of world empires. Like it's the supremacy. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah. Well, there were this. 6 decades of growth, and now that this is the first decade where Germany's just taking a huge plunge. Electric cars are destroying the auto market, which is one of their largest things. The trade has turned to shit. A lot of they're big in pharmaceuticals, but a lot of the precursors come from India, and this is again where outsourcing has just screwed them over. And as long as there's another superpower in town like China, who will buy it at a better rate or give material stuff instead of just financialization, like then that's the thing that makes the Gulf states so vulnerable, is they have all their money in our banks, and it's just a fugazi. We don't know how much it's worth. On paper it says this, it's all hollowed out. China's like, oh, we're making stuff. You want some of this, some of that? We got this, phones, beans, whatever you need. Those are going to be the ones who determine the future. And Germany went along with the outsourcing, and they're not. Yeah, I don't know. There's no easy way out of that to reindustrialize. Thank God. So China is 30% manufacturing of GDP. I know the GDP is not a great metric or whatever, but this is the metrics I'm using. 30% manufacturing in China, 20% in Germany, which is okay. There's still stuff that they're making, steel, still, there's still domestic shit. And then in America, it's 10%. And then of that, most of the stuff is dependent on foreign labor and foreign goods. I love this statistic. I always say it because it's super important to illustrate why is everything all screwed up. It's because you need to actually make things, and you can't just write numbers down and play fucking Monopoly games,
number go
right?
up. Put it in a calculator, make computer, make number go up.
When banks take money, they write it down. They go, I lent this money to him and he's going to pay me back 10% on that. And so I write it down in the book, and then they run and they say, I have all this money. No, you have debt. That's
I'm not a subscriber of MMT, but I do understand its rationale of money. Like, I feel like at its core premise, it's just money is just being made up at this point. We're just putting in numbers into a line somewhere, and we're just printing it. The government is just creating money.
I can't remember if it was COVID or if it was when the economic crisis started, kind of around the Russian war. But someone came out and was doing a press conference out of the Treasury, and they were asking, like, so will more money be printed? And he was like, no, we just add a zero to the spreadsheet. What?
Yeah, there's actually a guy in the back with one of those green visors and a big machine like this.
Just doing it all himself.
Whoa. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe erase the spreadsheet. I was like, start it over. Ugh.
But that's something else. I wish, when we talk about American education, I wish study economics, but not mainstream economics. Like, this is the shit that in 2008, all economists are caught with their pants down going, oh, how did this happen?
Yeah.
5 years ago, we were talking about how everyone who doubted capitalism and the free market and neoliberalism said that this was proof that it succeeded.
That's my fucking neighbor, bro. That's what he thinks. I'm like, okay, I'm saying scientists are saying that there's going to be a 10% crop yield decrease in the next 10 years, but the FAO says there's going to be a 1% increase every year on year, which is 10% plus, 10% minus, which is right. And he's totally in denial. They're like, what happened? We don't understand. We did everything that the textbooks in our colleges told us. Richard Wolff, he went to Yale, Stanford, and Harvard, and they were like, they didn't teach me shit about Marx in any of these classes.
Yeah, Grace, if everyone here has heard of her, Grace Blakely, you should look her up. She's a fantastic economist. She went to Oxford. I just talked to her privately once, and she was like, I was alone. Like, there were I had no heterodox professors. There's one, if you just go to heterodoxnews.com, if anybody's interested, you can get really good resources on how to study on economic theory. I mean, Keynesianism has had its day. There are post-Keynesians out there, but I mean, I think the 70s is proof that it doesn't work, or that it has its limitations, I should say. But one thing I do want to say about Germany, I remember when Trump was being when in the 2015 primary season, he was this media fixation, everyone was pointing to Angela Merkel and specifically her treatment of Syrian refugees as the perfect counterpoint to how to humanely treat, refugees in a humanitarian crisis. But it's worth repeating. The only reason Germany accepted so many refugees was, like you were saying, Chris, there was an aging population and a labor shortage.
Yeah.
And they accepted selectively. They were not accepting
Right.
a lot of the goodness of their hearts. They were accepting people with money and degrees and things to give to the state.
Yeah, and which
Yeah,
they didn't always get, and the ones that they thought that they could get the best of the best, but they got a mixed bag. But they did, as far as America, I was on the welfare system in America. I was homeless for a long time. I was living rough on the food stamps, all that. They gave, this is one of the reasons that galvanized the AFD, was that some of them were getting pretty good ride when they got here, so that but they would build them little houses on the outskirts of town, like little apartment buildings, and fucking somebody in my neighborhood burned the fucking place down. I think they had moved out or whatever, but it was like a message that they were trying to send. But the state itself was so desperate to get them integrated, and the tax system was slightly better than the US. I'm not bragging or anything, not a communist system or anything, but they got okay welfare when they first came.
But if you're a rightist, or you're a brain dead AFD supporter, you say, "Oh, it's because they just love migrants and they want to destroy European civilization." It's like, no, dude, they're fucking laborers, all right.
And the other thing, their competition too. And I lived next to these two people that, like, my neighbor was a fat white Nazi girl with like black hair and black everything. And she was really mean, but she was nice to us because she had a dog. And then the neighbors were fucking refugees from Iraq, who I was also good friends with. Didn't speak a word. We didn't understand each other, but we had tea and we went to their house and they came to our house and shit. It was awesome. I helped them move. But one of the reasons is the competition, that they have to live each other, face each other. And they're, neither one are highly educated. One is really scared to be away from home and doesn't understand how anything works. And the other one's very insulted that they can't live like the other rich white people and stuff. And because people that have money don't usually, like, educated, you don't see a lot of social conservatism and racism, only at the very, very top, but normal working class people that haven't educated, they don't go out and subscribe to that shit. So it's an element of that.
As amid my master's degree in the single economics course I allowed myself to take, economics of development, as we're discussing migrant relations to economics, a German student, I believe the professor was Dutch. I could be wrong. I apologize if I am, but not really, for reasons you'll see. A German student asked, I think we were talking about the general changes that migrants produce in an economy. And he said, where are the downfalls? What show me the downfalls to the migrants? Like they can't be all good. And she said, no, migrants are just really stimulant to the economy until they get the right to vote. That's when it's a problem. And I just, in a sanctioned lecture context, like, girl, just. So it's definitely, I think, especially in Europe, a little more implicitly understood that we love your benefit, but the moment you have the ability to influence our state,
going back to the biological, zoological lens of it too. White people from the north of Europe, I don't know what it is. Thousands and thousands of years of being cold, and I don't know. They just feel like they need to dominate, and I don't really believe that the rest of the world is that racist.
Let's turn race science on its head and apply race science to the racists. Let's do Nazi eugenics on Nazis.
I don't know. There seems to be a
don't take
pattern.
this seriously, please.
They're rotten. There's something rotten about them.
But I do think
You're
that
right.
like what that nebulously Scandinavian professor of yours said, Angie, about migrants, that is also when you see liberals in the US try to like argue with the conservatives on their own terms about migrants, It's like, no, these are hardworking people. Like, who do you think is going to pick our strawberries for $1 an hour? It's like, well, no, you're missing the point there. Like, you also shouldn't be defending
It's like,
modern
wait,
slave
not like
system
that.
either.
Yeah.
Like we should talk about unequal exchange and like Emmanuel Ness, like migration as
There's just like
economic
a really
imperialism.
critical dehumanization at the heart of the West. Like the West does not see any individual person as human unless they are slaving and working like a dog to improve their situation, regardless of their current situation. If you are in any way perceived as freeloading or like existing in revelry of your own existence, if you appreciate yourself in any way, shape, or form, the wider world will interpret that in bad faith and find ways to dehumanize you for it. And I think that that's like pervasive across just about any social sphere. If we wanted to tie it to like race or misogyny or, you know, international war and imperialism, there's this desire to like prove your humanity to me before I will afford it to you.
Yeah, there's a little trick I learned in America that if you always act like you're really stressed out, people will assume that you're working really hard. But if you're enjoying yourself and you're outwardly having joy, people will cut you down and tell you what you should be doing. And what's funny thing is China doesn't have refugees. They don't have the asylum system. And I don't know why, but probably because they don't go around the world creating them with their military.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the other thing I think people need to understand is, you know, like, again, I try to explain this to some of my more like older family members who still just get everything from like cable news is that like every migrant from the Americas who has come to the US has come from a country that we have destabilized in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. Which now that I'm saying this, I wonder how many Argentinian refugees we're going to see from Malay.
I hope you like donkey meat, you guys. Enjoy the donkey meat.
Yeah, but like everyone who is here, and this is why I recommend everybody read Emmanuel Ness. I mean, if you don't have time for that, then go listen to any one of his appearances on any podcast where migration is economic imperialism, because that's what it is. It is a form of like indirect human trafficking where you create, whether it's El Salvador, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's Cuba, where you strangle a country to make it as unlivable as possible. And then that population is then forced into the imperial core where they become expendable labor. And this is something Radhika Desai once talked about. She said that in times of crisis in capitalism, that cheap source of labor contracts. Like this flow of migrants that come in, whether it's from a labor shortage or whether it's to fill an economic need. When capitalism is in crisis and the belt tightens, it's the most vulnerable people who are the first to be cut out. And that's why, you know, let's be real. I know everybody said Biden's economy was great. The economy in the US has not recovered from COVID. I don't know if it ever will recover from COVID. Pandemics are not this thing that you can just bounce back from where everything is back to normal in a matter of, you know, a year or two. Like,
we're also like still in the pandemic.
We are. Yes, that's also true. Yes.
It is the pandemic still. There's no post-COVID yet.
No. And especially if you were, you know, an immunocompromised or disabled person, you will never live in a post-COVID world. Like this. The Biden economy, whether it's Powell raising interest rates, whether it's the war in Ukraine and the measures, like the U.S. economy has not recovered. It has not been to its pre-pandemic levels in any good way, really, for any significant amount of time. And there is a reason why when everybody talks about migration being an issue, it's like what you were saying, both Chris and Angie. It's competition that these people perceive. Like these people think that, you know, these migrants are taking my jobs and stealing my health care. It's like, no, not only is that not true, there are no jobs for anybody right now. Yeah. I can attest.
And that's, I could attest.
Personally.
I'm self-employed, okay?
And you're in Germany, I mean.
I'm a freelancer.
I was just about to say.
Yeah.
I have actually... Oh no, go on.
No, I'm going to bring something up. This is like a GIF of the
put my
economy. But yeah, go ahead. Keep.
Coke bottle. No, I Coke bottle glasses on. I have friends who have masters from Ivy Leagues who can't find jobs. Oh, is this Monty Python?
Yeah, this is the economy recovering. This just reminded me of that scene. I thought, oh yeah. He says,
No.
"Come here, I'll bite your legs off."
But it's true. It's like, we are seeing like ICE and DHS are trying to deport migrants because this is part of what the right sees as their own economic recovery. The tariffs, just as tariffs will reindustrialize the economy, these migrants that we're deporting will also give enough free space for Americans to come and take those jobs.
Yeah,
But,
that's the part that I don't understand. How does that make any sense?
well, again, if you're a conservative or if you're an American in general and you don't know how the economy works, then it makes perfect sense.
Dude, Angie, I was telling him last week, I said that the algorithms that buy all the stocks are running on the media that prints a bunch of lies about the Iran war and whether or not. So when there was a ceasefire or whatever, like this, everything just came back and so it's completely detached from reality. Is it really true that Wall Street people have no concept of like the geopolitical landscape?
I've said this before, that economics really should be studied a lot like astrology.
Just read the palm.
People hate that. Listen, I love astrology. I grew up studying astrology, like traditional Eastern astrology. But economics should be studied a little bit like astrology, especially in the West, especially in the US. Just people should have a little bit of.
What's that app that astrology app that everyone in LA has, the CoStar or whatever? That everyone what is the difference between CoStar and Polymarket or Kalshi? Is there a difference between one?
The difference, frankly, is that CoStar is a little bit more AI.
But it's
okay.
I remember this is getting into dark territory, but if anybody here watched the interview that was leaked from the Epstein files that Steve Bannon did with Jeffrey Epstein, you know what I'm talking about. Do you know what I'm talking about, Chris?
I saw that they would interview. What was it? I saw part of it. What would happen?
You can go on Dropsite's YouTube channel. They have the whole thing up. But there was this plot by Epstein after he was indicted to reform his image. They were going to cut together this 2016 style YouTube apology video where it was just this humanizing interview where Steve Bannon would interview Jeffrey Epstein and Woody Allen was going to edit it and put it all up on YouTube. Again, this sounds like some Mad Libs are just the worst people you know. But sidebar, my favorite moment from that interview of all these evil people trying to seem normal is Steve Bannon asks Epstein, "Are you the devil himself?" Because the devil is always the smartest person in the room. To quote Milton, it's better to reign in heaven than serve in hell. Or it's better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. And then Epstein goes, "I saw that in a movie once." But they Epstein said, which I think was so interesting, he said, nobody who works in finance understands how our financial system works. And this is coming from the man who had a very intricate, understanding of the financial system, enough where he could graft enough from the top of his clients to build and buy his own private island where you could, have these deranged sex parties. But, I think there is something to be said about how it's this, it's become this heathen ritual on Wall Street to just trust in the faith of the market. I mean, no disrespect to any people who are pagans, by the way, but you guys, what you guys are doing is more real than what Wall Street, brokers are doing.
Yeah, I can't believe it myself. I really don't understand the that because they've always been guessing, and Keynes was guessing, and there was always a thing where they wanted it to be a science, and it's not a replicatable science, and now the big kicker with the economics is. They always said, "Oh, communism doesn't work because of the economic calculation problem." But now they've solved that with the data. Like they have data on everything in China, and they just go, "We need to make more toothbrushes," and they do it.
Well, the 5-year plans, I mean, the Soviets really engineered the first 5-year plan. Like that is how you develop your economy, is through,
Badass, dude.
there are problems to the command economy. There are, but like when you read the works of Xi Jinping, like he is very, I think this is so interesting. When you read Chinese leaders and you read American leaders, it's like night and day, because in America, you gain political capital by, stroking your own nation, by like just sucking off your country and, expounding upon its greatness. In China, it's the opposite. You need to ruthlessly criticize the party. Like I think it was Zhou Enlai who said that there needed to be like a revolution within the party every 10 years to make sure that like the bureaucracy didn't become too entrenched. But like in China, they're very critical of themselves and of the problems in the economy, which is why they plan things out so carefully. Like you said, it's the command economy has problems. Like China does have a real problem of deflation and underconsumption, because I mean, in any, like the crisis of overproduction comes for all of us at some point.
Yeah, but I've read about this, and they've nipped it in the bud. For the most part, they used to build too many houses and stuff like this. But between giving people surveys, asking them what they like, what they don't like, and getting it to their phone, and they have these coordinated systems that are all interlinked, their payment system, and so it's a bit draconian. It's all
Well, it's less draconian than Palantir, because like
you're getting something out of it. Yeah.
In China, it's for economic planning. It's for the betterment of the country.
The other thing is that they'll get protests. They have more protests in China than anywhere else in the world, and they will listen to the protesters and side with the labor, as you'd expect the Chinese government to do, and will make them pay out back wages and stuff. And they usually side with labor over the companies.
And, I did something to tie this back to the region and current events. I did an interview with Shireen Saidi, a great Iranian scholar who was just forcefully deposed from her position at the University of Alabama, either Alabama or Arkansas, thanks to a campaign from MEK-linked people, or people who I don't want to be sued, who may or may not have ties to the MEK. If you don't know who they are, Google them. I don't want to talk about them here. But she said something that was so interesting. She said that part of the reason Iranians are out in the streets so much is because they actually think that their voices will make a difference. Mm-hmm. They actually think that their government will listen to them. When we talk about the hopelessness that embodies most Americans, I'll never forget this. Right when Roe v. Wade was overturned, I went to a protest here in LA. It was massive. It was huge. It probably the biggest turnout of a protest since 2020. I was walking back to the bus station, and I heard this one woman behind me talk to another woman, and she said, "We can come out here in March, but what difference is it going to make?" And I mean, it didn't. Nothing has improved since then.
What has been the point of No Kings?
Right. Well, yeah.
And how has it declined with each one that has gone past, with each major movement that has taken over the US? How have we seen all the major cities slowly falling off in their involvement? Because
what's the message there? What are we supposed to be doing?
Even in 2020,
dances outside of ICE detention centers. Like, come on, guys.
With dildos. Don't forget the dildos that they bring.
Dressing up in a mascot uniform, being a big giraffe with
I don't want to be too mean on these people, because they do this with the absolute best of intentions, and with
the
political education they've received. These are the Arabs they think they have in their quiver, where they are going to just dress up like frogs and like dance outside of a detention center. But I think when we see protests in Iran happening, and they like, this is the regime collapsing. It's like, well, guess what? The Mahsa Amini protests erupted. A reform candidate was elected a few years later, and then he said, "Guys, just drop the mandatory hijab thing." Like, if we want to, there is just physical proof in the pudding right there that there is a social contract that exists with the Iranian people and their government. I'm not saying it's a perfect society, but when was the last time any American protest had any influence in the legislature? Like, can someone tell me when any of the mass protests we saw in 2020 actually led to significant policy change?
Nah, I can't.
I use 2020 as the benchmark, because I feel like that was.
Frankly, we can argue that they worked towards significant policy change towards the police state.
Right.
The carceral state is stronger than it has ever been. Like
I-
Cop City is such a tangible reality across.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Yeah, Biden campaigned on giving more funding to the police
mhm.
than Trump did.
I think
Despite,
that's it. The activism actually just increased it. They go, well, we got these unhappy people. We better get some more guns so we can shoot them just in case they get too rowdy.
yeah, I remember going to the what was often touted at the time as the biggest protest LA had ever seen, and like there were people there with like voting registration, you know, petitions so people could register to vote, and they were like everyone was talking like. But it was also a mixed bag. There were some people who were like, "I'm going to send my liberal friends with this, but voting is not the answer." And then some people said, "No matter what happens, we need to get Trump out, no matter what." And looking back, I'm like, man, I wish we just gotten a second term over with in 2020 because, like,
Yeah. I had hope. I had hope up until a point, but then in 2008, when all the Occupy Wall Street stuff just fizzled out and the anger didn't really go anywhere, yeah, you sort of realize how I don't know any of this activism wasn't gonna work, and that must have been like Occupy Wall Street must have been a catalyst to really introduce.
Well, I remember going to some Occupy meetings. I was, fairly young, but like it was just something where you show up and no matter how old you are, no matter how much experience you've had in organizing, you're say held equal weight to somebody who had been a veteran. Like it was the lack of hierarchy and, horizontalism, that great fetish of the American left of, it's no kings, literally.
I mean, and what's nice is like the media didn't even have to go to Zuccotti Park, but they did, at least in those days. Like at least they still reported on the thing. Nowadays they would just call them rioters and say police were dispersed and killed, jailed them all quickly.
Well, depends on what they're protesting. If it's a genocide, then yeah, they're going to be rioters. But I mean, I think if anyone here hasn't read Vincent Bevins'
Jakarta Method,
but then there's the other one. Is it Tomorrow? What is it called? Shoot, it's got the blue cover. It's all about I think the subtitle is The Missing Revolution of the Decade, where he goes into great lengths about not just in America, how this anarchist method of organizing has spectacularly failed to produce any change. And I mean, for those who have studied the history of political theory and political economy, these debates were settled in the time of Marx. I mean, if you want really funny reading, just look at the Bakunin and Marx debates. But, it has been well known that anarchism does not lead to any lasting changes. When we look at, like, what was that thing in Seattle or Portland, Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone?
Yeah.
Or,
if we burn the mass protest decade of the missing revolution.
That's it. If we burn, everybody should read that book. It's big. And the Jakarta Method too, if you haven't.
I was thinking about this. Anarchism right now could work good for smaller communities and things like this, but for national governments and stuff, this is not going to work anymore. Technology won't allow it. It's too pervasive.
Well, again, that's part of the thing when you talk about command economies. It's like our anarchism, just like fair market economics, is premised on the idea that you have infinite resources in a finite world.
And I hate that. I hate that. I hate that idea.
Like it's just a different form of trusting the invisible hand, a critical theorist, no offense.
The WEF also say, well, we're going to technology no matter what. All capitalists think that it's going to outpace whatever damage that we're doing, that the rate of technology will save us no matter what.
Yeah, can you bring up, because we didn't Angie, you texted me about it and I forgot to respond, and Chris, you brought it up last year, the Palantir Manifesto. Can you bring that up, because we never finished reading indeed. All of that. I want to know what else is going on with that.
No, you don't. Wow.
I mean, I didn't want to read it. I was already depressed enough when it was posted. But like what? Other than like techno-fascism and like the entrenching of techno-feudalism, like what are the main takeaways from it?
All right, let me see what it says here. I get the condensed version because now when I Google something, it gives me the AI thing, which I just take because why not? Der.
I stopped using AI when I was looking at grad programs, and it was recommending me like fictitious schools with fictitious master's degrees. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm done using this.
Yeah. I don't have a choice. I have to do the open source secret browser that has the ad blocker built in. Everybody should get Brave. Brave is nice. It's a nice thing. But it always spits me out their little chat GPT. So let's see what it says. 22-point manifesto, April 2026. Corporate account. I think this is not going to be the actual thing. I should go to the Twitter and see what they posted, right?
Hollow pluralism.
Hang on. I'll find it. Don't worry. Don't worry. Just talk amongst yourselves. I'll find it.
It's something funny when you talk about like the AFD being the only ones with like pragmatic solutions. Because I look at, Meloni in Italy, like people who like this party is descended from Mussolini's fascist party, but she talks about like she loved to, just like how she condemns Israel, she condemned Franco imperialism in Africa. And it's like, well, no, it's not actually because she cares about Africans. It's that like literally fascism has said Africa for Africans, Europe for Europeans. It's really just this, and that's what also you see when Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens start talking about this Israeli Zionist skepticism. It's really just fascist isolationism. It doesn't actually mean that Tucker Carlson, to his credit, is actually interviewing like Palestinians on his show. Palestinian Christians, though, we should be clear about that.
I'll say I pulled it back up just to kind of refresh my memory. Outside of kind of like the soft power bullshit that the manifesto spews, the 2 points that I think stood out really prominently to me is like national service as universal duty and the kind of premise of non-rejoice at the fall of opponents. Like, do you know how sick it is to justify Orwell? Do you know what fucking sick idiots you have to be to vindicate George Orwell in the concept of eternal opponents? Because if Palantir is sitting there saying, like, we should not be happy when an opponent dies, because that gives us one less thing to direct our energy at and our production towards.
But what do they mean? Do they mean like American national opponents or like tech competitors? Like, what do they mean
our
by
society, to quote, it's the 11th point, our society has grown too eager to hasten and is often gleeful at the demise of its enemies. The vanquishing of an opponent is a moment to pause, not rejoice. The very next point is the atomic age is ending. One age of deterrence, the atomic age is ending. A new age of deterrence built on AI is set to begin. Like, we need to be interpreting this within the realm of statehood and not the realm of corporate, because they are talking about like international forces and not like their corporate opponents. They're talking about Iran. They're talking about Venezuela. They're talking about Cuba.
But then what does Palantir, like what stake do they have in imperialism? Like, I don't know everything. I don't know the full scope of Palantir's operation.
I think if you put yourself in the position to be the broker and the manufacturer of the morning after the war, of the reunification of the reconciliatory period, look at the people that are operating in Syria right now. To put yourself in a position where you can be a tech autocrat, in effectively a global tech oligarch, and reconstruct a state in your image. It's frightening. Like that is a terrifying prospect.
I think they're going to use it. I mean, their technology is now going to be on the open market, but also they're going to use it themselves and have contracts with governments and create backdoors. And they're already Palantir is using it on ICE, and so they're probably using it. I know they're using it in Gaza, using it in Ukraine. They're probably, And ever since Cambridge Analytica, they're, what's frightening to me is how well they know everybody to where they can swing elections, and they can, there was a time when advertisement was just throwing spaghetti at the wall saying, here's an advertisement for the Brad masses. Now they have advertisements that are tailor-made to specific people and
Well,
makes them hard to avoid.
The dark history of advertising, and Angie also has a psychology degree because she's just a Renaissance woman, is Skinner, one of the founders of behavioral psychology, eventually left academia to contract with advertising firms. Like he designed all these studies to help understand human behavior, and then went from there to the corporate world to make a lot of money in advertising. So I think, the science of capitalism has always relied on the cutting edge in the worst way possible. Or I shouldn't say capital, consumerism specifically. So, they are still working with psychologists, but they've now married them with tech to create this world in which, the dopamine you get from your phone. I also think this is part of the reason why Americans are being siphoned out of, actual political praxis into just like expressions of individualism, is like the dopamine you get from like posting a viral tweet or Instagram post that's like vaguely political. Why read a book? Why study when, well, I don't know, 10,000 people on Instagram liked my post saying that we should vote Democrat or that the labor aristocracy is a myth. That's a real one, by the way, from a DSA person. So, like, American workers don't benefit from imperialism. So, like, yeah, sorry, that was a tangent. Continue. I apologize.
I just brought up the little manifesto from Palantir. Okay, so we'll run through it. 22 points. Number 1, the debt. Silicon Valley owes a moral debt to the country that made its rise possible. The engineering elite has an affirmative obligation to participate in the defense of the nation. So basically, us nerds in Silicon Valley who are now super, super rich, we're going to save everybody. We're going to save Western civilization, right? Am I interpreting that? Number 2, the rebellion. We must rebel against the meeting industrial complex and the stagnation of the administrative state. Bureaucracy is the enemy of survival.
I think you could even read that as like the state has become obsolete.
Libertarian
bureaucracy, because I think that bureaucracy will be what allows tech to maintain its supremacy over the rest of us.
It's dark.
These AI companies are hemorrhaging money, but they certainly have a lot of power from the state already. None of them have turned a profit.
Yeah. Because they're not trying to turn a profit. They're trying to turn over the fucking government and make it so that they're monarchies, libertarian monarchies. Number 3, hard power. The ability of the free and democratic societies to prevail in the 21st century requires hard power, weaponry, energy, and industry, not just soaring rhetoric. So again, more nerdy kind of fantasy lingo here.
It's just like some incel, just like in a fedora in a basement, just like typing away. Sorry, continue.
The name of the company is named after some Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So number 4, software as steel. In the new era, software is not an accessory to hardware. It is the primary weapon. A tank without AI is just a target. So they're really high on their own hubris. The fact that they're going to integrate the technology into the killing machines. It's going to make everything super awesome. And again, more nerdy fantasy role-playing shit. You see him with a sword with his like assistant. He's like over there, Alex Karp dancing with his star. We're going to slay our enemies. Nah. Number 5, the AI race. The question is not whether AI weapons will be built. It is who will build them and for what purpose. Our adversaries will not pause for theatrical debates. This is actually true, but you don't have to have an adversarial mindset in order to.
And this is where I'm not saying that their failure is foretold, but as we have seen in Iran, the American military-industrial complex is incredibly overbloated and actually not that effective. Like we saw it first in Yemen in 2020, really in Yemen, and like from Biden and Trump, they could not defeat Yemen. They just couldn't. And F-16 was dangerously close to being downed. And then in the Pakistan and India war last year, it was Chinese tech that won the day. It was Chinese weapons that were more effective than American ones that India was using. And now, Iran has not been even close to being annihilated, despite there are these AI systems that are being employed already. Yes, it works on what amounts to a defenseless civilian population, but can these guys actually manufacture weapons of the future that will go up against an opponent? I don't know.
Well, especially when all the tech comes from China.
Yeah.
Maybe China should start sanctioning the US, right?
Yeah, we would be.
You're not. Gone. So the asymmetric warfare that Iran is doing with these $200 drones or $2,000 drones, they're cheap, or 200. I don't know. They're cheaper than the $1 million rockets that we're sending out in the interceptors and stuff. This is hilarious. All the shock and awe. Have you seen Idiocracy, where they have the big bulldozer thing that can't even get through the wall and stuff? It's just, we're not even doing it for practicality anymore. We just do it to.
Well, I'm old enough to remember that even when when the Syrian conflict was frozen, Assad was still able to counter the occasional American-Israeli airstrike with Soviet-aged air defense systems. And that was the first thing that Israeli warplanes took out when Assad fell, was because,
strikes rarely made contact in Syria during the time that Assad was president. Really? If they did, they were deflected like that. And that just wasn't discussed. Hezbollah had a role in that, but
a lot of this was just Soviet-aged, technically antiquated military technology that was still able to.
There are actually, I believe, in the past month, there have been photos and videos of Baas-era weaponry in Lebanon being used. So this is weaponry that would have been manufactured within Syria under Hafez or Bashar al-Assad being used now in Lebanon. So it's like, these are just the remnants that we don't know when they would have gotten out of Syria or been left behind in Lebanon at certain points that were able to be recollected and reused by the Islamic resistance in Lebanon. It's jarring. It's jarring.
It's interesting, right? Yeah, and I was wondering, and I learned for the first time. So the Lebanese government sent the guy, the Iranian diplomat, away because they had some row, and then it dawned on me that the Hezbollah and the Lebanese government, they don't like each other, and the Lebanese government is totally limp-wristed, and Hezbollah is the only one that's actually fighting.
Yeah,
that true? Give me the skinny on this. I don't know.
The Lebanese government has the military has retreated from much of the South. Like, they are not engaging.
Why?
The defense, because there's not, they have
the South has always been marginalized.
I need to say this, and people will be upset with me. I apologize to Lebanese viewers. There is no Lebanese state. Understand, the services that are afforded to many across Lebanon are because of their personal privilege and their ability to make something out of practically nothing, or the benefits of Hezbollah throughout the South, which aren't many, but they've been able to establish base social networks in order to create schools, hospitals that are run independently of resistance of any type of armed combat, but exist exclusively to support the populations. Lebanon does not have a functioning, capable state that is in any way able to provide resources or do anything other than send its military to die. And that has been kind of a point of conflict within Lebanese people because of the way that many, particularly family members of Lebanese soldiers, have said, you're sending them with nothing. No, do not send my son to go die because you are not willing to confront the Israeli opponent in at a negotiating table, because you're not willing to set a standard of real ceasefire. There's this really fundamental problem in capability and resource within Lebanon, where the state is completely cut off from any ability to do anything but capitulate a lot of the time. And then they're put in the position of trying to saddle Hezbollah and bring them in to that negotiating table that will ultimately be terrible for everyone involved. But
Mm.
the alternative is this kind of horrific onslaught we've been seeing.
Wow.
Well, and Hezbollah so Lebanon has what's called a confessional system because it is home. It's a very pluralistic society. It has Shia Muslims mostly in the south of Lebanon, which is why Hezbollah has such a large, base there. And then they have Christians who, not all Christians are the same. Unfortunately, Israel created a proxy Christian fascist militia in the 80s to try to create a buffer zone between them and Lebanon in South Lebanon. And that was those phalangists, they were called. Those are the fascists that Hezbollah helped drive out. And then you also have the Sunnis who were there, and you do have some Druze as well. But within the Lebanese government, each sect is like given a representative in the government to try to, balance out the population. And they're the speaker of correct me if I'm wrong, Angie, the speaker of the parliament actually is pro Hezbollah. I think he belongs to what's one of the blocks that's aligned. If it might, they have allies.
Strong of a word, but yes.
Yeah.
He has been hesitant about disarmament. But by and large, the government is ready to defang Hezbollah if it means that Beirut stops seeing bombs.
But it's very hard to do in practice because the army, from what I understand, the army is not as keen on doing that. The armed forces do not.
Because that fall on them yet, yeah.
What?
Because the idea of responsibility of protection of civilians falls on the army when Hezbollah disappears. And we talk about Hezbollah as if they do not remain a part of the government. Like they are.
Yeah.
They are an active part of the Lebanese government.
But
go ahead.
Oh no, go on. No, go on. Go, please. I don't want to monopolize the conversation.
Lebanon is in an impossible situation in a lot of cases. And it's like they are under existential threat. And the government itself is in this sort of, they exist by the gratitude and mercy of their overseers. The confessional government of Lebanon exists through the kindness of France and America and Israel, allowing it to continue to this day. And that's not a very intense exaggeration, particularly since 2020. So to say that the government could really I don't know what the government could do. I think for the government to continue and bullshit around disarmament to prolong any real movement on that front is maybe their only solution at this point, because the alternative is to drown resources that they don't have. I mean, hospitals, schools were the targets in Beirut. We were not the occupation targets what they know will hurt and what they know we don't have the infrastructure to repair. So there's a real guttural, what do we do here? Do we offer up the civilian population in the way that they have been offered up in the South, essentially offered themselves up in a lot of ways? But talking to friends that I've had from South Lebanon, the communities there are not uniform. Not everyone there is still there and wanting to be sacrificed. These are still people who deserve to have lives and dignity and should not be relegated to martyrdom by the state of where they were born. It's just a very difficult situation that I don't know how we unpack that all in a very neat way.
It seems like Greater Israel would have happened a long time ago. It seems like Iran was purposefully making sure that there were proxies funded in that region, because otherwise Israel would have expanded decades ago. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Syria was that was the domino that fell. Israel took parts of southern Syria within weeks of the fall of Bashar al-Assad.
And they still have them. But when we need to talk about Syria too, because Syria was also instrumental to the current crisis in Lebanon, because Hezbollah was very popular in Lebanon, because it was seen but by both Sunnis and Christians and Shias as the force that liberated Lebanon from Israeli occupation. But then they intervened in Syria. And while what you're saying strategically, as part of the strategic calculus that they were operating under, they entered for that reason, but domestically and politically, it gave them less legitimacy because it was perceived there as them getting involved on behalf of Iran, becoming a foreign state actor rather than a domestic one. And I mean, that was part of the problems that they faced domestically. And then obviously, and this is what I think is interesting, because the ceasefire that was imposed or agreed to in 2024 was a lot like the one we're seeing now, where Israel continued to try to establish a foothold in South Lebanon. They continued to bomb South Lebanon. Beirut wasn't touched. So therefore the ceasefire held. But in 2024 till now, Hezbollah honored the ceasefire. They did not strike back. This time around, they're not doing that. This time around, they are not even pretending that this is a ceasefire. They know that the South is still being hit, that their infrastructure is being hit, and they are firing back at Israel. I don't know the rationale behind that. I don't know why. I don't know. Like you said,
the scale of displacement was beyond what we've seen. I think that there is a greater urgency now, just from that perspective. Like, the existential threat is much more looming than it was in 2024.
Yeah. You don't back down and you don't negotiate after the negotiations have failed time and time again. And the same in Iran, like Iran saying, we're not going to negotiate anymore. There's no point.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the war will have to get hot again at some point, because this isn't a sustainable solution. It's like that quote from The Dark Knight, where when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, where Trump can't accept defeat, but also he can't secure victory. So blockading the blockade is what.
Blockade. Yeah. blockade. Yeah. I wake up every day wondering what the fuck. And I was a little disappointed when the war cooled off. I was like, come on, keep it going.
Well, but
what privilege we have to kind of think in these terms and think in that way, when it's like,
after Gaza,
I think they have to lose. That's the only thing, is if all the analysts are saying Iran will win. So I think if United States and they make a deal now, that's horrible for America and American imperialism. Like, it needs to go down hard. The whole thing with Maduro, kidnapping Maduro, and then not having a legal precedent of how they're going to charge him. Somebody needs to stop these people, and I don't want it to cool off just yet.
But even still, we should remember it's not cool. Like, it is the Iranian theater, is still being sanctioned. It's still being blockaded. Bombs aren't falling there. Bombs are falling in Lebanon. Bombs are falling in Gaza. Syria is still under occupation, and I found
Syria, thank God, is intercepting the missiles and bombs being sent to Israel and letting them fall on their own people. Alhamdulillah, thank God for that.
the blessed revolution. But I found what the news piece from, it was April 19th, a week ago, where the Syria Ministry of the Interior, they dismantled a cell that was going to launch attacks against Israeli positions in Syria on behalf of Lebanon and Gaza. But they weren't linked to Hezbollah, but the Ministry of the Interior came in and made sure everybody in that cell was imprisoned and couldn't. Supposedly they found missiles that were written for Lebanon and Gaza on them. But
and Jordan is just like Israel Jr., just whatever you say. Is that how it goes? Or
Jordan's just another American military outpost. Jordan
that's where they have the big weapons expos every year, right? That all the American and Israeli manufacturers, they come to Jordan and they have a huge, and all the people come out and buy guns from. This is what
It's probably either that or one of the Gulf states. I mean that's like I think we're also like what people need to see this as. It's not just. I think there's a lot of reductionism happening when it comes to Israel, where like they still a lot of people still subscribe to the Zionist oppressed government anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, where America's occupied by Israel. It's like no. You have completely flipped the dynamic on its head there. The U.S. wags, the U.S. wags the tail. It's not the inverse. It is
well. I will say that the intelligence that has come out of Israel for years and years and years has been exaggerated to fit the Israeli priorities, and that in turn has given them what they've given to the United States isn't always truthful, right? And they act on this too.
But you want to know what's funny is in that NYT article I mentioned last week where they broke down what made Trump decide that he was going to strike Iran. Netanyahu gave this presentation. He said that Iran was on its last leg. If you bomb, they will fall, et cetera, et cetera. The minute Netanyahu left, Trump asked his general what he thought, and his top general said the Israelis have a history of exaggerating for their own benefit. He's like, I wouldn't believe it. So it's known, it's understood within American circles that Netanyahu especially can't be trusted. His cabinet is full of just psychopaths, but they go along with it because the individuals don't matter. Just as if you were to shoot Trump, nothing would change. If you were to shoot and succeed Trump, nothing is going to change. If you were to swap Trump out for Naftali Bennett or Yair Lapid, it's not going to change because it's the systemic. It's the way that imperialism operates.
Yeah. So I told Adam last week, I said, it doesn't matter when you change the driver of the car, like the car stays the same and all the little moving parts, the evil moving parts within the car stay the same. It's the same car.
Right. And that's, I think, like the U.S. is not, it's not that the U.S. is waging war in Iran for Israel. That's just an asinine thing. What's happening is the U.S. is waging war on Iran because it poses a threat to their architecture. And if you want to know, like, we can talk about the Greater Israel Project. The Greater Abraham Accords Project, I think, is a better thing to focus on because you have the compradors of the UAE, of Jordan, of Kuwait, of Bahrain. Bahrain is literally imprisoning and torturing their own citizens who, are against this war. You have these states that also serve as landed military bases, landed aircraft carriers. And Iran is one of the few major powers in the region that does not allow that. And I mean, when they talk about Iranian proxies, that's also not entirely accurate. Like they're not like Hezbollah and Ansar Allah are not proxies. They're strategic allies who share an ideology or, share, even then like Yemen's strain of Shia Islam is different from the one in Iran.
I mean, like the concept of calling any Spanish Catholic church like a Roman proxy.
Maybe more accurate, though. I mean, I say this as a lapsed Catholic. I mean,
I would argue the opposite. I feel like the Spaniards would take a lot of offense to it's comical to presume that like shared faith and because ideology, even in terms of political ideology, not always super consistent across those three. Like it's
it's interesting because like even like with the Yemeni revolution that happened when the so-called Houthis came to power, Iran was the one telling the Houthis like, you guys got to chill out. Like we really can't help you if you go too far with this. Like you can't.
Russia and Ukraine are both Orthodox. Like
right.
We need to our brain cells need to just.
Well, it's like what Angie was saying is when you abandon class politics and you like, try to see things in terms of like pan-Arabism, pan-Islamism, pan-Sunniism, pan-Shiism. It's you get this oversimplified view of the world that is totally incongruous with geopolitical reality and the nuances that are contained therein. So see, perfect. You got the map. So now you understand why Iran is such a big prize for the empire. I mean, the Strait of Hormuz alone.
It's like a last ditch effort. I mean, they know they're in dire straits anyway, and so they think if they could topple Iran, which is not They should have known, or probably were told that it wasn't going to happen, and they did it anyway.
Marco
just to see if it
Rubio
could.
Marco Rubio told Trump point blank, like, I don't think we can do regime change, but I'll support you because I want to be president one day. No. I mean,
Probably. No, they were high on their own hubris from doing the thing with Maduro that they thought, well, we can do anything. Let's just do it. We have the strongest military in the world, a mantra that they've repeated so often that they believe it.
Well, you know, the whole operation is based off of what the US did to Japan, which is if we just bomb everything to oblivion, then we can establish political facts on the ground. But it has not worked since Japan. Like, not once has bombing a country, or even Iraq, like you want to talk about Iraq, even invading and toppling Saddam Hussein only made Iraq even strategically closer to Iran in terms of its political landscape. Like, even that you could argue backfired, because now you have Iranian, paramilitary groups who were initially formed to fight ISIS now firing at U.S. military bases.
Yeah, I love this. And what the fuck are the Kurds doing? The Kurds are just it's like, oh, the United States can sick the Kurds on anybody at any time.
Angie
I
can speak to
I
that
met a
better.
Kurdish guy one time. We got drunk on a train in Hamburg. I didn't know. He gave me a little coin from his it's like, I never heard of it. What's the deal, Angie?
There's a lot of good literature on the Kurds that I just don't even know where to draw. The Kurdish people are a case study in generational learned helplessness in a context where they have the resources to be active and to act. So they are probably some of the most elitely trained paramilitary groups in the region, often the most highly trained militias, particularly those that are gender inclusive. I mean, women are fighting alongside men. They're also fighting, in particular, women. Kurdish fighters were among the liberators of the women that have been sex trafficked across Syria and Iraq by ISIS.
Sounds good to me. Okay.
However, they are chained to this like century-old promise that if they comply with the Western order for long enough, they will achieve statehood. Like, there was they bought into the Westphalian myth to a degree that they would be able to earn statehood through good behavior. And that's not consistent ideologically or in practice now, but you're still trapped in that cycle. They are still trapped in alliances that tie them heavily to the US and in a historical reality in the region that puts them kind of in opposition and just socially distanced from the populations surrounding them. So groups of Druze and Alawis and Shia and Christians that maybe would have related very closely with Kurds have not lived close to them because of this kind of isolationist and like statehood aspiring vision that the Kurds had over the past.
The liberal Zionist kind of vibe. Yeah, like, we want our land, but we're progressive, but we also will kill you if we have to.
It's really, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it is some strains of Kurdish nationalism are a bit ethno-nationalist, but continue.
Definitely, but there's, I'm not justifying ethno-nationalism. There is ethno-nationalism in every single one of the groups that we have discussed today. Yeah. And those are like that kind of strain lives in every single one of them in the exceptions to the rule. But the Kurdish problem is one of like deep political abuse. Like, if an abusive relationship could be translated to the geopolitical sphere, I can't think of a better example than Kurdistan and the US, because the only reason the Kurds do not have a state is because they were particularly left out of the devices of French and British mandate in order to weaponize them as a population. So those boundaries of Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, they are arbitrarily drawn during this period, and they're drawn, with Turkey in particular, drawn to exclude and divide the Kurds across these 5 borders, so that when they are trying to achieve any sort of kind of internal community rights or acceptance, they're fighting multiple fronts. And then they strategically, they being kind of the Western imperial forces of the US and France and Britain, depending on the area, align themselves with the Kurds in specific moments to offer them a lifeline in moments of existential threat. So it's really hard to fault a group being persecuted, often to the point of extinction, by structures that have been set up by the very imperial forces that are now swooping in to save you from taking that safety. Like you are thinking about surviving to see your community exist.
But they
Wow.
sold them out, Reese. Like
Yeah.
in Syria,
Time
they
and
did
time
like
again.
they failed. They did not come to save them this time in Syria. When Jolani and his thugs were marching on what was then Rojava, Trump told according to the Wall Street Journal, Trump told Jolani, "Hey, don't mess with the Kurds." And Jolani was like, "Yeah, sure," but he called his bluff and did it anyway. And then we saw these horrific images emerging out of there. I mean, these guys are terrorists. I say that with no hesitation. Jolani and his team are terrorists. You know, they
Terrorist is an arbitrary word. I'm going to say this just from my high horse. Terrorist is like an arbitrary kind of like bullshit filler intellectual
They're
word.
dickheads. They're
It
fucking
doesn't-
dickheads.
They are murderers. They are
There you go.
sexual psychopaths. They are
There you go.
sadists.
Serial killers.
They
That's
are
fair.
they are
Bad
violent
people.
murderers that are entrenched in an ideology that is explicitly supremacist, in the same way that the IDF are not terrorists. They are violent racist murderers. And I need that to like
And-
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I just like,
please.
you know, I hate the concept of calling them a terrorist when you can call Hamas terrorists under the same definition that technically tracks. It doesn't sit right in my spirit. So I want to almost like do away with the whole word and use words
Yeah.
that describe
No, that's fair. I appreciate that perspective.
It's a social construct.
Absolutely.
Because these guys, I mean, you're right. They're war criminal. Say whatever you want about them. These guys came into Rojava, and I mean, they cut Kurdish women's hair, which was, you know, sacred in their culture. They slaughtered families. They dispossessed, and I think this is the real ticking time bomb was that the Kurds were overseeing this mass prison of former ISIS fighters that, you know, came from abroad to, again, just like a lot of HTS people, came from abroad to basically kill and rape non-Sunnis in Syria as part of this jihad that in their twisted ideology they had set in. And it was sort of more or less understood that Jolani nominally thought that he could take Rojava because he wanted to unify Syria. I mean, Rojava also has some of the largest oil reserves in Syria, but it's also because he wanted to be you can't tell me that this man who shared an ideology with ISIS did not want access to this prison of former fighters, trained fighters who were also willing to do anything for this. Oh, there's Damascus. So, you know, I think some of those prisoners were supposedly transferred to Iraq, but I have a very hard time believing that some of these ISIS guys did not. Time will tell, but I have a hard time believing that some of these ISIS guys did not end up walking freely.
Well, look, one big final question. We've talked about, you said ethnocentric states. They're everywhere these days. They're going like hotcakes. Everybody wants one. I'm sorry, it's like 4 a.m. here.
Yes, sir. I know it's late for you guys. We'll end soon.
Is it?
Last
What's
point.
the possibility? Where are you at? Are you in Syria?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm in the East Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you have a state? You know, one of the reasons why they're going so gung ho with the ethno nationalism in America too is it's predicated on this pseudo intellectual idea that that's the way that it has to be, and that the social cohesion factor has to, has to be the backbone of it. Is that true? Do you guys feel like that's a thing? Like, do you need for everybody to be uh, homogenized in order for things to function?
All I'll say to that is Israel is one of the most I mean, it's unified under now because it's unified under a nationalist project. But I mean, like Angie was saying, in Syria, you have the Ashkenazis who, even though they don't represent a majority, are, part of the political, they make up most of the political elite in Israel. And then you have what they call the Mizrahim, which are all of the Arab Jews who were violently extrapolated from their countries, who were strategically placed in neighborhoods as buffers between the Palestinian who lived there and the Ashkenazim who settled in those places, which, by the way, is exactly what the U.S. did when it came to settling on land that still had a native presence. They would put free black families in between the white neighborhoods and the native neighborhoods and the indigenous neighborhoods. So they did the same thing with Palestinians, with the Mizrahim and the Ashkenazi. And I think that there's the myth of cohesion, which is part of the fascist project too, which, envisions a classless society where it's the nation that unifies people. And you can have different classes that harmoniously exist as part of a nationalist project. I think it's a myth because contradictions do not go away in any society, even communist ones. And it's just another form of bourgeois idealism to believe otherwise. So that's just my those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think it's membership is the right way of thing. It's like you have to have some defining characteristics or beliefs that put you in that ability to be with us. What do you think, Angie?
Yeah, I want to hear Angie's take. Yeah.
I have a much more I think eclectic, spiritual take on much of my political theory these days, because I've just been in a very exile has done things to my brain. So it's been putting me through some thinking. Syria was not sectarian in any, the Syria I knew was just not what it is now. And I grew up with family in the Syrian Socialist Nationalist Party, the just supporters of Gamal Abdel Nasser. I grew up understanding what Arab nationalism and pan-Arabism and what the idea of unification, regardless of our religion and our state and our origin, meant for us. It meant to be united against oppressors. It almost meant to be united just as the oppressed. I really think sometimes we need to go back to Paulo Freire and think just in terms of our citizenship as the oppressed, and maybe start from there. Because I don't know that there is going to be any solace found in trying to rectify solutions of ethnic fracture. I started off my journey studying political science and war, trying to understand the impact that ethno-linguistic fractionalization had on Civil War outcomes and on their likelihoods of recurrence and extension of the civil wars. And it's almost a made up metric. In the same way that we can make up cohesion, we make up most of these divisions that don't exist when we don't look directly at them. In the same way that I have more in common with a random worker in Spain or Vietnam, I have infinitely more in common with the Sunni worker of Damascus than I do the Shia elite somewhere in a high rise in Tehran, if they're still up. But even with that, I can acknowledge this sort of larger unification that brings us together. There is something to be said about being a little bit spiritually, and I think like in our humanity, in our nature, in our scope of ideas outside of the stupid little political words we have made up and invented into our reality, to acknowledge who we are as people and the lineages and the cultures and the faiths and the things that have made us the people and communities that we are, without conflating those with our rights to exist and our dominions over others, because we have lived in communities that don't do that, and we know that it is possible.
That's beautiful. You just said it. I mean, that's exactly it. We are coerced. I wrote an article about how a lot of the right-wing feelings that people have are artificially created and inflated, and that we're race baited constantly, and that they've played these tricks. Machiavelli wrote The Prince in X 1600, however long ago it was. And the strategy works, and it's been employed ever since. But the reality is, I'm a humanist guy. I can get along with everybody. You see it when you travel or you watch other people travel. It's done every day that we overlook these little things, and we actually find each other sort of interesting. Oh, you're different. That's fine. But as a mechanism for holding people together under a power, it's pernicious. It's right in your face, and it's historically always there. And I don't think we need it, but they're sure going to keep trying to make that the case. And apparently, like the Palantir guys, they're scared to death of a world government. But we have all these existential crises that we need to tackle together. And so I don't understand.
The idea of a world government is what, it is premised. It's part and parcel to like far right conspiratorial thinking. With the Nazis, it was the Judeo-Bolshevist conspiracy to the Pizzagate, like Trump adjacents during the 2016 election. It was the Illuminati, like pedophile trafficking ring that was just folded into Epstein's reality.
Also the idealist root of like the United Nations and
true.
The IMF. Like it is the Truman Doctrine and all of these things that I think we overlook a lot too.
Yeah, there's
to be said of who's in charge of that international government.
For me, it's the certain personality type that always grabs the reins, and historically that person always ends up having the same. It's a different guy or lady, but it's the same mechanisms and the same behaviors. And to recognize that, then you know exactly what they want and what their limitations are as far as their humanity. But it's hard. We don't. We haven't studied history enough to see this coming.
Everyone should read Carl Jung and investigate the collective unconscious.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
I'll be on Rev Left Radio in a few weeks talking about him.
Oh, that's awesome! I'm so excited. I didn't know that.
That's
specifically
cool.
relating to this topic. So like, yeah, I don't know. Anyone struggling to think about like, why can't I connect with people of different faiths? Why does the world have ethnic conflict? I think we should reflect more on the ways in which our lineages are probably rooted in the same things.
Yeah.
And different manifestations.
We all eat, sleep, poop, shit, fuck. It's all good. Let's just
all of our gods act the same and look the same, and all of our myths function the same in our minds and our lives, and they work to carry us through the same life cycle points and the same mechanisms of nature that we've rejected in order to like deify man and the dollar and the drop of oil. So we have a lot of work to do psychologically.
Yeah. Well, that's why I went vegan. I eat beans instead of meat, and that's my big life story. So as I see the same, I see the little, even the cockroach. I go like, oh, he's just living his best life. Look at him go. I'm not gonna hurt him. Just let him be. We're all in it together. We're all. I heard somebody say we're all on spaceship Earth, and we're all co-pilots together, and we all need to take care of each other. Yeah, that's kind of who I am. How about you? Any last philosophy you want to get out before we end this, Adam? What's your words of
No.
wisdom?
No, I'm not wise. I have no wisdom and a very tenuous grasp on words. So I defer. Go listen to Angie's Rev Left Radio appearance for all
Yeah.
the collective unconscious.
Hopefully we'll be here next week. We'll see. See if anybody wants to come back. Will you guys hang out? We're going to talk right after this. We'll say goodbye to everybody. Anybody who's watching. I don't know.
That's
Probably some
coming with
people.
suck off, LOL. So I don't remember what that's in reference to.
I didn't look. Nice. There's some people. Good people. People are always good. All right, folks, take care of yourself. Angie, wonderful to see you. And you can check out Adam Save Chic Jara now.
Go follow
Instagram.
Angie on Twitter. Her Twitter's great.
Yeah. Levantine Witch. I love it. Yeah, it was really a pleasure. Stick around. We'll talk to you guys. Hang on.